Date, February 18th, 2259. This is Detective Frankie Wright, conducting preliminary interview with primary suspect in Project Exodus case filed under 371/27. State your names and designations for the record.
You can call me Link. Everyone does. Arden Thompson, attorney.
Alright. Link, what's your current designation at Project Exodus?
None, detective.
But you are still employed by Exoterra, the firm that leads the project for Homebase?
Was, detective.
Now don't be difficult, Link. What did you do for them? Why are they paying for your lawyer?
Chief engineer on board the tertiary wormhole relay station of Project Exodus. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
If you allow me to tell you what happened, you'll understand why I'm no longer with the project, or the firm that hired me in the first place.
You mean you want to confess?
I'll tell you what happened, and then you can tell me if I'm confessing to a crime, or if I've prevented a disaster. A bigger disaster. I must protest!
Shush you. Do you work for Link or Exoterra? Link, I'm leaving it up to you. Do you want to tell me what happened?
Clearly. Willing and eager. That's why I came here of my own free will. Wait a minute. Think this through. Whatever you say can be used against you. You're looking at the death penalty. So you do work for me.
Let Link speak.
Off the record, then.
Not possible.
I want it on record.
Then we've agreed. Can you say that you are of sound mind and reason, Link?
TBD.
By me?
Sure.
Okay. However, if I suspect your mental well-being at any point during this interview, I'll have to ask for a psych eval. And with that out of the way, let's begin, shall we? What made you finally come out of hiding?
Oh, no. I'm telling this story. I'll decide when it begins.
Now, don't push me, Link. I've already been very open-minded with you.
Were you? Let's see how open-minded you can get, detective.
Fine. I'm listening.
Several moments before the station went up in flames, taking the entire relay along with it, a few things happened simultaneously. The wormhole opened unprompted for the second time since I had been brought on as chief. The station lost power, leaving the wormhole open and unstable. And, mind you, all of this was happening while Wrench and Buzz, my associates, were on the surface of the planet fixing the stabilizers. I was alone on the station, detective.
So you panicked. Flipped the switch?
Panicked? You assumed that I didn't know what I was doing. Acted out of fear? Nerves? No. I knew exactly what I was doing when I reset the reaction that would blow the entire chain of relay stations and close those fucking wormholes forever. I mean, at the time, I thought it would be for good. But since Project Exodus is being reopened by Exoterra at the behest of Home Base, I had to come forward. It needs to be stopped. To answer your question about why I came out of hiding. Let's not go...
That already sounds like a confession. Okay. Continue.
I don't know what my lawyer knows, or is allowed to know. But that doesn't matter. There are far greater things to consider here than me, or even the firm. Home base is the only thing that matters. You see, if Project Exodus resumes and the wormholes connecting us to the Andromeda are opened again, we would be asking the devil himself to step into our reality. Do you understand? Can you understand the urgency of what I'm telling you?
The devil? What are you talking about? Maybe I should get a shrink in here.
Wait, Okay. Give me a moment. I just need to... Devil was a figure of speech. There I was on the day, moments before blowing up the relay, alone in the middle of nowhere, closer to Andromeda than to home base, at the very edge of our galaxy. The only two people in the radius of 1,000 light-years were in radio blackout on the last planet before the void between the two galaxies. No lights, life support suspended, and the gates to a place that human thoughts cannot fully grasp were opened before me. I peered into that place, and what stared back at me? I wish I hadn't seen it again. But my mind was made up. My heart was still. I knew what needed to be done. I had known it since the first time that the wormhole opened unprompted several months before. I might not have known what I was up against back then, but I was prepared for it this time. The plan was in motion. My hand was on the switch, and I had made my peace with the collateral. I just had to wait for Buzz and Wrench to finish the job so that the wormhole relay would stabilize and I could restore power to the station. That needed to happen first, so that the shockwave of the explosion on station number 3 would carry throughout the relay and close the entire wormhole pathway for good.
Premeditated. Barely any remorse. It's not looking good, Link. Add to that 5 months it took you to come forward with your confession.
I was in my protective suit just in case, gripping the lever next to the controls that engage and disengage the wormhole. Hands steady, eyes fixed on it as it was moving closer to me, moving out of its twisted reality and crawling into the station. This one was even more intense. It was angrier, nastier.
What
was it? Fuck if I know. Evil incarnate coming out of the wormhole and closer to me, ready to kill.
Chuck! Hey, Chuck! Call Dr. Zalowski. We have a live one over here.
You've already decided that I'm crazy.
That's not my job, Link. Zulowski will determine your state of mind when she gets here. You can continue talking in the meantime if you want. I got nothing better to do.
I suggest you don't say another word, and I suggest you get the hell out of here. My counsel. I don't want a lawyer, detective.
I'm afraid it's out of our hands now. It all depends on Zulowski's report.
Damn it! Fine. But I'm getting this off my chest one way or another. I don't know if I'll be allowed to do it again. Don't interrupt me anymore. Both of you.
You have about 15 minutes until the doc gets here. That's all I can do.
Out of the question.
Shh.
Where was I? Half a year before I arrived on station number 3, Wrench and Buzz had come back from the planet to find my predecessor in the same spot where I had been, with her hand on the lever. She already planned it all out, had the whole thing in place. My only job was to implement the plan again and do what needed to be done.
To do what she was prevented from finishing.
When I first found her plans for collapsing the wormhole relay in the chief's quarters after relieving the acting chief engineer of duty, I thought that she had lost her mind.
She had already been taken off station and back to home base sometime earlier,
so I never got her side of the story. I thought that she was one of those extremists wanting to take down Project Exodus. I rejoiced. Detective, I laughed. I thought, thank God this mad woman was stopped. Fool. Damn fool is what I was. This had nothing to do with politics. It was about salvation, but not the religious kind. No, not that. It was about the salvation of reality as we know it. Jonesy, that's what they called her, the chief whose place I took. She was a hard-headed woman, though, and smart, actually. Jonesy was the chief engineer on the very first station that was built. That same station that you could see from anywhere in the northern hemisphere before I took out the relay. Earth Station at home base. The key point and hub of our exodus out of this galaxy. What a name she was back then. A fixture in everybody's home. I remember the day when they opened the first wormhole and I saw Jonesy on the Holo News explaining the whole process. She was my hero. Jones would take us out into the stars further than we've ever been. How could I have ever doubted her? How could I have ever thought that she had lost her mind and acted against everything that she ever stood for?
Do we really need a history lesson?
It seems that we do, Detective. Because we all forgot who she was when we collectively decided that she went crazy. Did anyone from the firm or home base actually investigate her claims about the wormholes?
I think that question is directed at you, Thompson.
I'm not at liberty to say. Of course not. They've been spreading the same lies about me for the past 5 months, and I'm a nobody. Chief engineer on Station 3 out of 30. I always wondered why they brought someone of her standing to that station. My initial guess was that her expertise was needed the most there, since it was the ficklest station in the relay. But now, I'm not so sure. I suspect that Exoterra were trying to shut her up and get her as far from home base as they could, making her sound like a crazy... Look, I don't care what you have to say about that, Thompson. Not now. Not after what I saw, and what I did to save Earth. You think all those dead station engineers don't weigh on my conscience? And that I don't constantly think about all the others that were EVA in the moment of the explosion of the relay? That are forever lost in the midway between our galaxy and Andromeda?
Shame none of this will be admissible in court if you plead insanity.
But I had to do it. I had to destroy everything, regardless of the human casualties. There was no other way that I knew. At that moment, I was the only person standing between home base and...
The devil?
You mock me, Detective. Just like everyone else in Project Exodus did when I tried telling them about what I had witnessed on the station before going through with the plan. Rest assured, they were notified about what I came to understand. I'm sure Jonesy must have submitted many reports on the occurrences as well. The wormholes are not just bridges between 2 points in space, Detective. They have their own rules of reality. And it seems, also, of life. On the day when the wormhole opened again during my command, I had to decide then and there if I was going to allow that perverted existence to enter our own and potentially change everything. I doubt we would be sitting here and talking like this. I would even go so far as to say that we probably would not even be here at all. Let me paint you a picture of what I was up against when I arrived at the station, so that you can understand me and my position better, because I can see the reservation in your stare. First, I had 2 insubordinate engineers who thought they knew everything about everything. They had no respect for me or my credentials, since they had been on that station from the moment it was built. Didn't even give me a chance in normal circumstances, those two, let alone after what happened as my time on the station progressed. Less and less, as things became more complicated between us, and more dangerous. Second, I was in charge of the very last station in our system that had the most unstable wormhole engagement of all of them. We suspected that this was due to the conditions on the planet where we had placed the stabilizers. Not to go into too much detail, but placing the stabilizers on the planet and its orbit was the only solution in this particular case. There was no other way we could find around it, even with years of problem solving by the best physicists, engineers, and technicians in Project Exodus. Naturally, you would say at this point, the stress got to me, and even Jonesy before that. Isolated, terrible working conditions, the pressure of keeping the station together, sure, all valid points against me, and the preservation of my mental stability. However, my first designation in Project Exodus was far out into the void on station number 22. I could handle the isolation. Hell, I was there alone for 2 months without a backup crew at one point. How did blowing up the relay not occur to me then?
The more pressing question is, how did nothing strange happen on station number 22, or any other station for that matter?
I can't answer that, Detective. At least, not with complete certainty. I wish I could blame it all on an Exoterra and home base cover-up. But I'm afraid it might not be as simple as that. Besides, I'm an engineer. My job is to open, close, and stabilize the wormholes for space travel. You can say that my guess would be as good as yours. Or Thompson's.
Well, a little bit better than ours, I'd like to think.
Listen, whatever the wormholes are hiding could become an entirely new field of research. That's not what we're here for, is it? And I asked that you don't interrupt me.
Oh, Link, but isn't that exactly why you're here, out of your own free will? To tell us what you think you saw that made you destroy all those stations with a single pull of a lever after planning it out so thoroughly?
I already said that Jonesy planned it out. Why are you purposefully twisting my words, Detective? You're implicating her.
So you were just an accomplice? Is that what you're implying?
No, that's not what I said. God, let me think. Let's go back several steps to a few months before the main incident. To the first time the wormhole opened without our interference. To the first time when I realized that we were dealing with something previously unthinkable. On the day in question, Wrench was off station on some private matter, and Buzz was recovering in his quarters from a 2-day EVA stint. I was manning the station by myself, since there were no planned tests with wormhole engagement, and not much needed doing. To put the timeline in perspective of Project Exodus, this was happening very close to the day of the official opening of the relay. Just a few more tests were on the roster to smooth out the technicalities and better the functionality of the stations in the relay. Very soon, civilians would have been able to cross from one galaxy to another. We were very careful around the controls and following instructions from home base. There was no room for error. And yes, Detective, before you can comment, the pressure on me as chief engineer to get everything just right was even higher, growing by the minute.
I was going to comment that it's interesting how you were also alone the first time that this thing happened. But don't let me stop you. Please, continue.
Oh, no. Buzz woke up when it opened, startled to wake by the alarms. He was right there on the deck with me. He didn't just see the thing in the wormhole too, Detective. Buzz almost got obliterated by it. Damned coward. I told him that we needed to let everyone know about what happened, but no, he didn't even want to tell Wrench, let alone inform Exoterra and Home Base. Buzz thought that he would end up just like Jonesy, in an asylum, shamed and ridiculed. Like you're treating me now, Detective. As I was saying, we were close to D-Day. Very soon a lot of people would be going inside those wormholes, thinking that they would have been safe to do so. As safe as taking a shuttle to Mars, right?
I guess...
Wrong. When that wormhole opened, there were a few minutes between Buzz arriving to assist me in performing an override to forcefully shut it down, and me noticing the creature. Was I worried? Sure. There had always been the chance of the wormholes opening unprompted. Moreover, this station had so many problems already that I simply thought it was a malfunction in the stabilizers. We had changed the main conductors 3 times by then, since they just kept corroding from the acid in the planet's atmosphere. My worry didn't include a monster coming out of the bend in space-time. Shit, that sort of thing wouldn't even occur to me. My imagination deals with different things that include problem-solving of a practical nature. Not the devil.
There's that word again.
Whatever it was, does calling it a creature or a thing make you feel more comfortable, Detective? Makes me feel the same, to be honest. The same fear. The same visceral churning of my insides as a reaction to the acknowledgement that something utterly other than what I know as a living being was moving into my field of view. As I was working on the override, Buzz burst into the engineering deck. The alarms were still going, and the entire room was filled with intense red light. I expected Buzz to join me at the consoles, but he was standing just a few steps away from the wormhole when I glanced up. He was frozen there, and glaring inside. Only a weak force field keeping him from being sucked into its vortex. Instead of that, however, against the forces moving everything on our end into the point far off in the void of space connected to station number 4, something was crawling towards the shield. Toward Buzz. Buzz! Buzz! I called out to him. His jaw dropped as he was gaping at the thing, my entire body shaking. I could barely compute what I was seeing, let alone go out there and get him. Get out of there! I screamed after him, barely overpowering the sound of the alarms. No movement from Buzz, not even a twitch. But the creature sure was moving. I guess I can call it that. For whatever it was in its physiognomy, moving or crawling don't seem to be apt descriptors. Nothing would be. It was twisting and turning and managing the most primal forces of being that were ripping through the wormhole like it was nothing. Time itself was being pulled onwards. Yet this creature was making strides toward Buzz. The station. Me. I doubted the shield would hold, you see. At that moment, it felt like there was barely anything between us. No more than a curtain. Would a curtain stop a charging tiger?
How did you stop?
The first time, we were lucky. The station still had power, so I could override and collapse the wormhole without much damage to the station, or the relay, and without letting that thing get one more step closer to us. That wasn't a chance I was willing to take the second time around. On a side note, I noticed that I finally have your attention.
You've had my attention since the moment you arrived at my desk this morning, Link. I was just expecting, well, not this, to put it bluntly. Tell me one thing. Did Buzz give you any explanation of his own about what happened?
We barely spoke about it. He was in shock and had trouble doing anything until Wrench returned a few days later. And when his bestie was back on the station, Buzz pretended that I was talking nonsense, that there were no irregularities at all. He even told Wrench that the wormhole opening must have been my miscalculation, my mistake. I'm not going to lie. That hurt. I saved his goddamned life! And when I eventually confronted him alone, he confessed what I already told you. There was no chance in hell that he would admit to seeing the creature. During these 5 months, I did a lot of introspection. Soul searching, if you will. You said that I show no remorse for what I did, but that simply isn't true. Could there have been any other way? I don't know. The only firm conclusion that I came up with was that I never wanted to see that creature again. Or let anyone else see it. For months after the incident, I could see the shape of the creature in my dreams, my fantasies. The mere image and acknowledgement of its existence clouded my every waking thought. It still does. I still think that this thing and others like it are somewhere in their dimension going about their wicked lives as we do, waiting for another opening to move into our plane of existence. But we should never again cross paths. I stand firm behind my decision. Not for lack of remorse for the human lives that were lost, but from the conviction that we and those extra-dimensional beings should not exist in the same realm. Not ever, do you understand?
What did they look like?
I don't think I can do them. I don't think I can do them justice.
Try, regardless.
The first time I saw the creature, it was hard to tell anything about it. Buzz was the one that had a really good look at it. Too good, by the sight of him. The deck was drenched in the red light of the alarm, and the sound of it was maddening. I had a hard time focusing on anything else apart from the console at first. That override was a piece of work. The hack job that was done on it after Jonesy's attempts to destroy the relay took me a long time to fix. Even longer if you account for the fact that I had to reinstall Jonesy's switch as well. Before Buzz rushed onto the deck, I didn't even look up at the wormhole portal. Detective. I was alone with it for those few minutes, and I didn't even know it. I wish I could say that this experience made me braver when I was truly alone on this station the second time the wormhole opened out of nowhere. It made it worse. To remind you, There was no power on the station then. There was no shield between me and the thing that appeared then. When I eventually raised my gaze toward the portal, all I could see was a shape. A dark cutout of a thing that was at least 10 times more massive compared to Buzz, who was standing on this side of the shield. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Looking into the portal was a mind-bending experience in itself. Adding this thing, I don't know. How... It looked so giant that my brain was telling me it could not possibly fit inside the vortex, much less pass through the portal. But, Detective, the portal has no size, no dimensions as we know and experience them, not the way normal space does. If the creature crossed over, it might have been as small as Buzz and me. Smaller, even. Or it could have taken the shape of the entire station. The exoplanet we were orbiting. The entire galaxy, for all I know. That was all I could see before the override kicked in, and I could finally collapse the wormhole. In the last few seconds, before the unearthly light of the vortex was extinguished, the shape of the creature moved in such ways that I could never put into words. It was almost like it sped up its movement, and for a mere fraction of a second, I thought that it was on the deck, that it had crossed over. Thank God it hadn't. When the wormhole collapsed, the alarm stopped immediately. The deck was now back to its artificial white light, casting harsh, dark shadows on the floor. Buzz was still motionless, so I called out to him again. I was still shaken from the whole ordeal, and it took a bit of self-convincing to step onto the platform to collect him. After a few moments, I found myself standing next to Buzz with my hand gripping his shoulder. I thought that he was whispering something, but I couldn't quite catch what it was. I was too afraid to ask. It took 15 minutes before either one of us moved, and a slow walk to the living quarters until Buzz finally spoke to me. "Good night," was all he said. Then he walked into his cabin and stayed there for the next few days, not coming out even to eat, much less to do his job. I didn't have the heart to order him to do anything. Not that he would listen to me, anyway. I had 2 months in my escape pod to think about what I saw on my last day on station number 3 before I pulled the lever. And still, I can't recall the thing in perfect detail. That first glimpse overshadows all my attempts to remember the moment I took a better look at it. All I can add is that I could tell that it was evil. It wasn't its shape, the way its form stood against the surreal light or the wormhole, nor its ungodly movements. I could see it in the...
Seems like Zulowski has arrived. I'm afraid your time is over, Link.
Wait, I'm not done. I could tell that I still haven't convinced you about why I did what I did, Detective.
As I said, it's not me.
But you're the one that matters.
Why, Link?
Isn't it obvious?
And here's Chuck to take you.
No. No. Please.
Give me a few more minutes to make my case. Project Exodus needs to be stopped. The relay must not be re-established. The wormholes must remain closed. You have to believe me. You have to do something about it. It all rests on you, Detective.
My fate is sealed. It's all on you now.
You know, that Buzz wasn't such a coward as Link made him out to be. There was a rumor spreading a while back that there was a witness account of what had been happening on the station before the incident. It was recovered from the station number 3 shuttle's black box. Seems like Buzz had a lot to say before he died. Now, I personally hadn't heard that recording, Thompson, and I'll even admit that I never truly believed that it existed until now. Even when my partner tried convincing me that he had listened to the whole thing himself, I couldn't believe it. However, if I'm remembering what he told me correctly, there seemed to be a lot in that recording about a strange occurrence in the wormhole that terrified Buzz. Maybe even a lot to corroborate Link's statement here, come to think of it. Huh. Shame that his 2 associates never reached home base and perished adrift in their shuttle. 2 people are much harder to make disappear than a recording, wouldn't you say? And 4 eyewitnesses' accounts are far more difficult to disregard than 1 or 2.
No comment, Detective Wright. I'll contact you after the psych eval of my client is over. Goodbye.
This is Detective Frank Wright, ending preliminary interview with suspect in case 371/27. Further steps in the investigation to be determined by Dr. Emilia Zalowski. Preliminary observations by primary investigator on the case will be attached as interview addendum.
You probably heard about tourism in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. I've been there myself several times, and it's nothing like what you see in games or horror movies. There are no ghosts, mutants, or radioactive anomalies, and death isn't waiting for you around every corner. Actually, I think it's one of the most peaceful and prettiest places on Earth, an example of strength of nature and how it can reverse the damage that we caused it. Thus, when my friend Alex decided to go there, he knew who to contact. He's a physics student, and right now, he's doing some kind of research on nuclear fallout, and he said that he wanted to get some direct measurements and samples. But we both knew that it's just an excuse to go on an adventure. We visited the old power plant, the abandoned city Pripyat, and the surrounding exclusion zone. It was nice, but I would probably just bore you with more details. That part is not important anyway. We were driving on some dirt roads in a forest east of Pripyat when we found it, an old, rusty fence and a chained gate that blocked any further passage. There was a big sign with a radiation hazard symbol and caption, "Restricted area, authorized personnel only." There was a pair of massive metal blast doors in the side of an artificial-looking hill not far beyond the fence, with a large, white O13 painted on it and "No Entry" sprayed on top. "Well, what do you think it is?" Alex asked. "I don't know. Looks like some kind of bunker," I replied. "And it looks like it's been closed for some time," I added after taking a closer look at the doors. The 2 halves were welded shut in the center. Alex took his samples and readings, but we were too puzzled to leave just yet. "Do you think we can get in?" I asked. "Well, not this way for sure. Even if it wasn't welded sealed, I'm sure we have no way of unlocking it," Alex replied while examining the massive door. "It looks like an underground bunker. They must have had a way to pump air inside, and I don't think this is it. There must be another way to get in," I said. We circled the main entrance to try to find a means of entry. The day was already coming to an end, and it was slowly getting darker. As we were searching, a thought crossed my mind. Why would they weld the doors? What's so important inside that they went this far to keep people away? "Look, there's something there!" Alex pulled me away from my thoughts. It was a concrete block, a couple of meters large, with what looked like vents on the sides. As I looked into the vents, I noticed that they were also sealed with heavy-looking steel hatches and no clear way to open them. However, there was also a somewhat smaller door, labeled service tunnel. with a large wheel on the outside. "Should I open it?" I asked. "Yeah, I really wonder what this is. Anyway, we don't have to go in. At least we'll see if the door still works." At first, the wheel wouldn't turn because of all the rust and dirt, but eventually it budged. The door unlocked. I pulled, and it slowly started opening. It was very heavy and took a lot of force. Behind the door, there was a small platform and a tight vertical tunnel with a ladder. What caught my attention was that there was an identical locking mechanism on the inside. That meant that they could lock the door from both sides. But why? We were lucky, because if they had locked it from the inside too, there would have been no way to get in. I stepped inside and shined my phone light down the shaft. It wasn't strong enough to hit the bottom. The air was damp and old, and there was something that I couldn't identify. A very faint, chemical-like smell. There was no radiation nor signs of any other hazards.
"You've got to be kidding me. This is so cool. We have to come back here and check it out later,"
Alex said. I couldn't agree more. It was almost dark now, so we resealed the door and called it a day, but we promised ourselves to return. I immediately tried to do some research when I got home, unfortunately with no success. I even tried to call Pavel, a friend of mine who knew the area better than me. Actually, it was him who brought me there for the first time. He couldn't help me either, but promised to ask around. I told him about our plan and asked if he would go with us, but unfortunately, he was out of the country for a while. A week later, we packed our gear and went on with it. We brought some rope, heavy flashlights, glow sticks, Geiger counters, waterproof protective clothes, an oxygen meter, and a small emergency scuba tank just in case. And yeah, we're not stupid, so we told our relatives and friends about our trip and when we were expecting to return. We closed the door behind us as we descended down from the access shaft. We couldn't know what was down there, and we didn't want to cause a radiation leak or something like that. We eventually dropped down into a concrete tunnel which enclosed the air vents and some smaller pipes. There was obviously no power, thus no lights. Good thing we brought our own. We followed the tunnel and reached another door, but this time it was a regular one, not the heavy bunker type. We went through and entered a room with 4 large air pumps and some electrical equipment and controls. The ventilation shaft split here into 2 larger ones that ran straight into the ground, and 2 smaller ones that went straight across the room where there was another set of doors. Behind the doors, there was a large hall with numerous boxes, crates, and other cargo just laying around. There was also a security checkpoint. Behind the checkpoint, we found the main door that we had seen from the outside. Just next to it, there was some heavy lifting equipment. We returned through the checkpoint and took a look at a set of elevators. There was a simple map with the layout of the facility, floor by floor. We were on floor 0, main entry hall. There were another 4 floors below us. Floor -1, offices, security, and recreation. Floor -2, secure laboratories. Floor -3, accelerator, clean room decontamination chamber. Floor -4, experiment site. The map was titled Object 13. It wasn't a military bunker. This was a research site. We took a set of stairs, since the elevators were of no use without power. An unsettling thought brushed my mind as we were descending. They were probably moving some supplies, and then left them there and took the equipment to the main door. Were they trying to get out? I stepped on another stair, but something rolled away under my foot. I lost my balance and fell on my back. My pack luckily absorbed the impact. I looked under my feet to see what caused my fall. Empty bullet casings. This wasn't the sole reason why I felt odd about this place. As soon as we got down to level -1, I noticed that every single door was open. Every single one. There was a canteen and a kitchen right at the beginning of a long rectangular corridor. Various offices surrounded the corridor. There was the regular stuff, paperwork, old computers, personal belongings, all right there where they left it. Did they leave in a hurry?
"Dimitri!"
Alex called from the canteen on the opposite side of the corridor.
"What?
was all I could say when I followed him to the canteen. There was food still neatly served on tables, but it wasn't spoiled. It wasn't fresh either, but it wasn't decaying, as a 30-year-old meal should.
How is this possible?
I asked.
I don't know. Maybe it was irradiated or something? But it's not anymore. I checked that. I really don't know, man.
He answered, as puzzled as I was. Oh, why didn't we just turn back and leave? Now that I'm writing this, there were so many red flags already. Something really wrong happened down there. But I guess we were too excited and curious. But it was at this point that my excitement started to fade and be replaced with an eerie feeling. Nevertheless, we continued and descended down to level -2. The stairwell ended here, and to go deeper, we would have to cross the entire floor to reach another one on the opposite side. There was a security checkpoint and a large blast door that we had to pass through to reach the labs. Again, every door was wide open. However, the things that people left here weren't neatly placed where they should have been. It was a mess everywhere. There were all kinds of rooms with all kinds of equipment that I didn't understand. Occasionally, there were more empty bullet casings on the ground. There was still the one central rectangular corridor as above, but the rooms around it were like a little maze. Almost at the other side of the floor, we found the head scientist's office. As I said, everywhere it was a mess, but I found a logbook on the desk. There was only a handful of pages, the rest torn out. 5. October 1984. Today we successfully managed to translocate several atoms without changes in any physical properties. It's going to be a long road until we can transport solid objects, but we're doing some good work here. 17. January 1985. We've managed to transport an apple today. However, I couldn't help but notice the pattern of red and green skin on top was slightly different, but it was still the same apple, with the same structure, shape, everything. We also tried to transport some electronics. They were unharmed and in working order. I think that we still have a lot to perfect and learn about this technology, but we cannot slow down now. The country is relying on us. 21. February 1985. After the animal trials, we translocated our first human today. He is alive and healthy, a brave hero of our nation. We have proven that this technology works now, but the practicality is still very limited due to the fixed translocation ratio. We still cannot send matter, only exchange the positions of two equally massive objects. I have proposed a new type of device that could possibly achieve one-way translocation of just a single object, but it would need an immense amount of energy. 1. May 1985. Our superiors accepted my proposal. They're going to build a new, much bigger translocator here in the power plant, so we can use a nuclear reactor as our direct power source. There's one more thing. We've now translocated dozens of test subjects. Each one is alive and well, but sometimes they are a little bit, well, different. They sometimes claim that various events in the past happened differently than they really did. Sometimes they claim to know people who don't exist, or more alarming, they know people who they aren't supposed to know. The following was written below with a pencil by hand. Test subject 28 was speaking an unknown language and couldn't understand any real language after the experiment. There was a lot of missing pages afterwards. 25. April 1986. We are going to try to change our approach. It's been more than a year, and we're still unsuccessful in eliminating the translocation symmetry anomaly. We still don't even know what is causing it, but we are not going to make any progress this way. Today, we are going to try to access the conduit reality instead. Even though Unit 2, the one we built in the power plant, is still new, we are going to use it for this experiment. Who knows what wonders are waiting for us on the other side? There was one last page in the logbook. On it was just a single phrase, written again and again. We let them in.
Alex, I think we should go.
I called.
Man, come take a look at this,
he answered. I stepped out of the lab and back into the hallway. There were clothes all over the corridor. Well, what was left of them. They were torn to shreds. No bodies, no blood, just strips of cloth and an occasional shoe or watch. I looked up and stared down the dark corridor in front of us. I just stood there for a while. It was, I don't know, as if something tore all these people to shreds and then cleaned it all up, except the clothes and other non-organic material. A wave of pure, instinctive dread washed over me. I couldn't move. I didn't even breathe.
Let's just get out of here,
Alex said. We turned around and walked away, slowly at first, but we quickened our pace. Our footsteps echoed across the underground structure.
I just want to be out of here, man. We shouldn't have done this,
Alex said. I didn't even tell him about the logbook, but my thoughts were cut short after a sudden realization. His voice didn't echo. It was just our footsteps. I think he realized it too because we both stopped and listened. Nothing. Just silence. I stepped forward. I took another step. There was this door just in front of us, and I forced myself to try something. I closed it behind us as we passed it and placed a glass beaker that I found on the ground on top. I took a step forward. Silence. It was just echo after all, I thought. We walked away, carefully at first, but then we once again quickened our pace. We turned around a corner, and then it happened. The glass shattered. Someone, or something, just opened the door. We dropped all our gear except our lights and ran as fast as we could. I didn't even know I could run this fast. I always tried to be a tough guy, but I was never so scared in my life. Our footsteps didn't echo anymore, or better said, they weren't in sync with ours anymore. Something was running after us. Each second it was getting closer and closer. As soon as we reached the security checkpoint, we started closing the door. The rusty joint of the door squealed in protest, but we pulled with all our strength. We almost had it closed when we heard a loud, guttural, and unnatural growl. The door slammed shut and I threw the wheel to the locked position. My heart was pounding so hard that it was all I heard for a while. No, wait, it wasn't my heart. It was that thing, pounding on the locked blast door. We were running again. We reached the stairwell and ran up, taking 2 to 3 steps at once. We finally reached the air pump room. The ascent really exhausted us, and even though I was scared shitless, I felt like I would pass out if I took another step forward. Besides, we locked it down there. Alex sat down and leaned his back on one of the large vertical vents with a bang. Oh fuck, we locked it down there, but we forgot about the vents. Alex and I looked at each other, our eyes met, and then the vent burst and he was gone. I only heard him scream as he was dragged back down. I felt terrible for doing this, but I just ran. I climbed the service shaft and locked the service door shut when I was finally out of that hell. As soon as I had phone service again, my phone started beeping, with loads and loads of missed calls and messages from Pavel.
Hey, Dmitri. I found this guy. He says he knows what 013 is. Please pick up as soon as you can. He says it's dangerous, and you should stay out of it. This guy's calling me now. He sounds serious. Please call me back at once. I don't know what's going on, but he's going there. Please, I hope you get this before you go down. Stay safe, friend.
There was also one message from an unknown number.
Dmitri, this is Anatoly Moros. I know what you found and I'm on my way from Kiev now. Do not go down there. If you already did and you managed to get out, lock the door that you used to get in and make sure it stays locked. I will try to call you when I'm here.
So here I am, writing this while I wait. I do this to make sure that no one else repeats our mistake, since I don't know if I'll live long enough to tell anyone personally. I just can't leave Alex behind. I have to go back. Part 2.
fucking college kids. What does the sign on the fence say? No entry. What does this here say?
He pointed at the text sprayed across the main door.
No fucking entry. You think we just put these up because we don't have anything better to do, like you? You really have nothing else to do but snoop around things that you have no business in.
He sighed.
Now look what happened. Look what you did. What your awesome idea brought you.
Morose yelled at me after I finished explaining what happened. First thing he did when he arrived was check the service tunnel and make sure it was closed. He didn't even talk to me. He just ran there and made sure it was sealed and locked. He was an average-looking guy, probably in his mid-50s, but I think people would say that he looked older than he really was.
What is this place?
I asked.
You have no idea,
He said, stood up, and walked to his car.
What are you doing? I'm going to save your friend, and you're coming with me. You will do everything exactly as I say and nothing else. Stay quiet, try not to exhaust yourself. The air is not circulating, and you'll burn all the oxygen and suffocate. You will stay tethered to me by this line.
He lifted what looked like a small retractable winch.
When I turn off my light, you will do the same, immediately, and you won't move.
He continued and pulled out a shotgun from the car's trunk.
Are these going to help?
I asked.
To an extent, but don't use it unless I tell you to.
He said and handed me a pistol.
Last thing, do you know how ozone smells?
He asked and I nodded.
Good. If you smell ozone, run.
I started considering whether this was a good idea when he chained and locked the door from the inside with a massive padlock.
This is the only way we can keep them from getting out,
he said when he noticed me watching them. Hell, of course this was a bad idea. Worst one I've ever had. So let me rephrase. I was contemplating whether I would ever see that padlock open again.
Am I not going to get a key?
I asked, watching him close it with a loud click.
Sorry, I just have the one, but don't worry, I'm right here,
he said, sliding his hand across the line that we were connected through. The tether reeled back and forth between us as we walked through the service tunnel. It gave me some sense of security. I could be sure not to get lost and separated from the only other person nearby. It created a sort of weird rhythm with the diesel fuel that sloshed around in the large canisters we carried. Our first stop would be the generator room on the other side of the main entry hall. The generator rattled and hummed as it slowly started spinning up.
Did you see it?
Morose asked.
What? We have some time for talking until it turns on. Did you get a look at what took your friend when it happened?
No, I answered.
What is this place?
I asked again. He stared into the air, sighed, and explained.
It was originally a military stockpile in the 50s. In the late 70s, it was then repurposed into a research site. Anything that was too crazy for public to know about, they've done it here. And it was some fucked up stuff sometimes. Then, they had this project about teleportation. They even rebuilt half of the facility to house it. And that's when it all went to shit. How do you know about all this?
I asked.
I used to work here,
he said.
So, what are these things?
I asked.
They are...
He started, but then brushed off.
I don't know. I was just an assistant. Is there someone who knows? Not anymore. Everyone who knew, well, let's say they never left this place. And how did you get out?
The engine clutch engaged with a click, and the generator finally came to life.
I didn't. I took a sick day when it happened.
The lights turned on for a brief moment, and then shut down again as a circuit breaker popped.
That's okay. We can't spare the power for the light. We'll need it someplace else. You'll see,
Morose said. Whatever happened here, whatever killed all the people down here, and God knows how, it was all connected with the Chernobyl disaster. He wasn't here. He took a sick day. He took a fucking sick day.
Come on, kid. Let's go.
We were at the lab security checkpoint that me and Alex closed earlier during our escape.
Remember, stay as quiet as you can now,
Morose told me, and we slowly opened the blast door. To our surprise, light blinded us immediately, something shining right at us. I took a step back while my eyes adjusted to the light, and then I finally saw the source of the light, Alex's flashlight. I went to pick it up, but Morose quickly stopped me with his arm and pointed to the blackness of the corridor in front of us. For a moment, we stood there, silent. And then I thought I heard something in the distance. Morose immediately turned off his headlamp and gestured to me to do the same, while he went to crouch in the corner. I followed and turned my light off too, but we were still lit up. Alex's light was still on, illuminating the room. Morose quietly cursed, quickly went to grab the flashlight, and then it was dark. Completely pitch black dark. People say that when you're under stress, you lose one of your senses. The other one's heightened to compensate. It's true. Or maybe it was just getting closer. It doesn't matter. I heard something drop to the ground with a muffled splat. Then, a few irregular footsteps. Not like footsteps of someone walking with a pair of shoes. It was like someone walking barefoot, flesh on concrete, and they were getting closer. I instinctively grabbed the gun Morose gave me, hoping I wouldn't need to use it. It was now so close that I could hear a slow, raspy breathing. I think I even felt a cold breeze on my face. Inhale and exhale, in and out. I don't want to think about how close it was. Then, something slammed into a wall the way we came from, with a crash and the sound of glass and plastic breaking. Whatever thing was there with us turned and quickly followed it. I thought that it was gone, and I was safe. Out of nowhere, suddenly a hand brushed against me. I almost jumped and screamed, but the hand quickly moved and grabbed my mouth, preventing me from making a sound. Another hand grabbed my gun.
It's me. Follow me slowly,
a voice whispered into my ear. We entered a room on the side, and I heard a door close silently. We waited for a while, and then we turned our lights back on.
Fuck! Don't ever do that again,
I told him, but he wasn't listening. He was looking at droplets of a thick, black fluid on the floor at the other side of the room.
What is that?
I asked.
Blood. At least it once was,
Morose answered as he followed the trail. We traced it across a few rooms until we stopped in a large chemical lab. There was something on the ground, in a puddle of the black liquid. It was Alex's knife. There was some red liquid too. I could tell it was, without a doubt, fresh blood. A trail of a few droplets went in the opposite direction of the black liquid.
Look, he must have gotten away,
I whispered.
I doubt that. If we want to find him, we have to go to level -4.
He just glanced at the knife and then acted like he didn't see anything.
Look, this is his knife. They must have fought here. He went that way.
I pointed in the direction where the blood trail went.
He must be hurt. That's one more reason for us not to waste time. Let's go.
He stepped off, back into the central corridor. I wanted to stay and search for Alex, but the tether that connected us wouldn't allow that, so I obliged and followed. Initially.
Morose, please tell me what's going on. How do you know he's not here? Because I know. Just shut up. We don't have time to argue.
We weren't whispering anymore.
I'm not going anywhere until you tell me why you're so sure,
I insisted.
Because he's dead. What? But you said, come on, let's go. This is not a place where we want to stay. We have to get down to level -4.
Morose cut me off. No, I trusted him at first because he was the only one that could help me and help Alex. That was the one thing I focused my mind on, saving Alex. Only now, I was realizing what I had gotten into, how blind and how stupid I was. He wasn't just an assistant, as he claimed, and we weren't here to save Alex. I started unbuckling my end of the tether.
What the fuck are you doing?
He asked, raising his voice.
I'm going out. Give me the key to the padlock,
I demanded.
No, I can't do that,
he said, with agitation in his voice. I had no choice. I raised my gun at him.
Give me the key,
I demanded again.
You really think I would give you a working gun? You're not going anywhere,
he said and pointed his shotgun at me. I pulled the trigger, but there was only a click. Fuck.
Why are we here? Why didn't you call your friends, your superiors, or whatever to take care of this? But you have to hold me at gunpoint. Let's say we don't share the same goals anymore, but have no doubt they are coming here, but not with guns, with concrete. They're going to seal this place up for good, and we have to be quick if we want to be out by the time that happens. Why can't you please just let me leave now? I asked, my voice shaking. Because it's a two-man job, he said, and looked me in the eyes. There are things much more important than you, me, or your friend. I couldn't deny that. Maybe he was right, but I couldn't do this. I didn't understand anything. Who are you? I asked him, returning his gaze. But then I looked away. Something caught my attention. Movement behind Moreau's. It was a creature, crawling across the ceiling towards us. Its body vaguely looked like a human, but its skin was pale and stretched tight over its thin bones. Its veins were visible through the skin, filled with the same black fluid we found earlier. It had no hair and only holes where its nose and ears used to be. Its eyes were bloodshot, locked in a blank stare. We escaped it before, but our argument brought it back. It was too late to run now. Moreau's noticed my stare, but he wasn't fast enough. The creature lunged at him, and at the same time he turned around and fired a shot, but missed, and the thing knocked him to the ground. The shot was deafening in such a tight space. I heard only ringing in my ears. My eyes were slightly blinded by the muzzle flash. In the confusion, I turned to run, but I forgot that I was still tethered to Moreau's. After the line was completely reeled out, it jammed, stopping me right in my tracks and sending me falling to the ground. I looked back and saw that the creature was now looking at me. Moreau's was lying there on the ground. I must have pulled it off him by yanking on the tether, and now it would come to make sure that wouldn't happen again. I finally managed to disconnect the tether and threw the useless pistol at the creature, hitting its head. It briefly stumbled, and I ran to the only place that quickly came to my mind. I barricaded myself in a large storage room adjacent to the large chem lab, and blocked the door with a shelf. The creature spent a minute trying to get in, but then gave up and left, presumably to finish off Moreau's. And I stayed there, just sitting in the corner, too scared to do anything. I don't know how much time had passed, but it was starting to get hard to breathe. For a time, I thought I would just stay there and end it all, peacefully, instead of a violent death that was likely waiting for me on the other side of the door. But then, I heard a voice call my name. Alex's voice. Alex? Is that you?
I called back.
Oh, thank God! I thought I would die here! You came back!
He answered. I went to open the door, but then changed my mind.
How did you find me?
I asked.
I was hiding too, but then I heard gunshots, and I came back here to look. Dimitri, please come out! We have to get out of here!
I sat down again. Maybe it was really him. But what if it wasn't? I didn't want to find out.
No, he said you were dead. I saw blood too. No, it isn't you. It can't be. What? I don't... What are you talking about, Dimitri? One of those things got me pretty good, but I'm alive. Dimitri, just please come out and let's get out of here.
He pleaded. I had decided. I wouldn't open the door. But then, I changed my mind once again, after what he said.
Dimitri, do you remember the cherry tree? I knew you would come back.
We used to play at this huge cherry tree when we were kids. We used to climb it all the time, but one day, I had this idea to make a bet. Whoever gets the highest wins. I almost got to the top, but then I realized how bad an idea this was. The branches under me were too thin, and I knew they could break under my weight any time. But Alex didn't want to lose. He tried to climb even higher than me, and then the twig he was standing on broke and he fell. Luckily, he landed on a pile of fallen leaves and only broke his leg. He could have killed himself if he fell on solid ground, and it was my fault. I almost got him killed because of a stupid bet. We decided not to tell anyone how it happened because we were both afraid of getting in trouble, but I felt guilty for it for the rest of my life. There was no way he could know about the cherry tree if it wasn't him. I opened the door, and there he was. He looked terrible, bruises and scrapes all over. and he had a blood-stained, torn piece of shirt wrapped around his left hand.
Are you okay?
I asked.
I've been better. Let's just get out of here.
He replied.
That's not going to be easy,
I said. I told him what happened until now and that the door was locked. Only Morose had the key, and he was either dead or gone.
There were some tools and supplies up there, right? Maybe we can find something to cut the chain,
Alex said, and we decided to try it. It was better than searching for Morose's key after all. We found his shotgun stained with blood, both his and the creature's, and immediately felt safer. We also picked up our packs that we dropped earlier. Luckily, all of our gear was still there. We carefully walked back to the main hall, but I felt that something was watching us all along. We saw a few old saws and files next to the main door. We grabbed all we could, but we weren't alone. The inhabitants finally decided to make their move. One of the thin creatures crawled out of the stairwell. I aimed and fired. Part 3. It fell down from the ceiling, twitching like a dying insect. But it didn't matter, because it wasn't alone. Another one crawled out, then another and another. We ran to the air pump room and blocked the door by jamming a large saw between the handles. We worked quick because we knew it was only a matter of time until they got through, or came through the vents. Alex couldn't operate the shotgun with his hurt hand, so he offered to do the cutting while I stood guard, ready to kill anything that would come out of the vents. It was working, but it was too slow, way too slow. Alex barely got through a few millimeters when I thought the door would break already. They were pounding on it, slamming into it, and I saw it rattle in its hinges. I thought that they would get through any moment now, and then they stopped. I heard them run away. I coughed when a sharp odor hit my nose.
Fuck. What is that?
Alex asked.
Ozone,
I answered. Part 3.
Oh no. No! No!
I said anxiously. I immediately realized that the odor was very similar to what we noticed when we entered the bunker for the first time, only much, much stronger. My Geiger counter started clicking too.
What's going on?
Asked Alex.
That guy, Morose, he told me about this. He told me to run,
I said. Just as Alex finished cutting, the door shook in an enormous slam, sending dust flying in the air and slightly bending outwards. There was nowhere to run. We had a heavy steel door on one side and God knows what on the other. I had no idea how we could survive. Luckily, Alex did.
Do you still have that rope?
Alex asked. Without hesitation, we tied the rope around one of the pumps. It wasn't easy at first, working with the rope with my hand shaking violently. But then another loud slam echoed through the room. One of the bolts that held the door was launched across the room. I felt a wave of cold run down my spine, and suddenly, I had just this one purpose, to tie the knot. Everything else just shut down in my head. I was done, and we dropped it down the broken vent that Alex got dragged into before. We stepped inside and started sliding down the rope, then heard another slam, and then what I think was the door, hitting the ground. It was through. I slid faster, but the rope was starting to burn my hand. I lost the grip and fell down a few meters, landing on top of another vent. It broke, and I fell through inside another corridor. Alex then landed on top of me. It took us a few moments to get back on our feet. I looked around and saw an orange door titled Decontamination. We were on level -3. There was no handle, only a button on the wall next to it. I pressed it and the door opened after a few seconds. We entered a small room with a control panel. Using it, I closed the door behind us. Several jets then blasted us with air. A green light popped up, and then another door in front of us opened, inviting us deeper into the facility. I noticed that the control panel was stained with a smudge of fresh blood. Was Morose still alive and went through here? We couldn't go back. Our only option was to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. It was supposed to be a clean room, but the place was wrecked even more than the upper levels. After some walking and searching, we found a room that looked like a makeshift infirmary. A few dozen beds separated with plastic curtains and some medical equipment. Some beds still had information clipboards attached. Patient 2, quarantine. Survey Team C, patient in coma. Observation only. Do not interfere. Deceased 7/28, unknown. Patient 6, quarantine. Survey Team C, patient in coma. Observation only. Do not interfere. Deceased 7:52, unknown. Patient 19, quarantine. On-site operative assistant. First contact with Survey Team C. Massive blunt force trauma. Chest, suspected internal damage. Cranial concussion. Suspect damage to cervical spine. Dislocated left shoulder. Fractured left humerus. Multiple lacerations, chest. Deceased 404. Internal hemorrhage. Patient 7. Quarantine. Survey Team C. Patient is psychotic and unresponsive. Mild to moderate frostbite. Observation only. Do not interfere. Termination order. Signed, A. Morose. There were some body bags on the other side of the room. Empty. We searched the area and eventually ended up in the lower levels of the facility. There was this rotten smell all around. We entered a room, and well, there was this substance everywhere. On the walls, floor, ceiling, everywhere. It was like flesh, with tendrils or veins running across it. Like from a Dead Space game. Then we found bodies attached to it. Dozens, shriveled up like dead insects in a spider web.
I think we should go back,
Alex said, anxiously. We turned around and went back, but then I heard some debris shift in the distance, in the corridor we came from. Soon enough, one of these things crawled into the light emitted by my flashlight. It stood there for a while, staring at us with its blank eyes, and then it leaped forward. Then it fell to the ground, dead, and an empty shotgun shell did too, soon after. I heard more of them making their way towards us in the distance, so we ran deeper into the facility. I shot a few more on the way, but then ran out of ammo. We eventually found a long, dark tunnel flooded with water. The things were almost on us, and I could see them crawl along the walls behind us. We entered the tunnel. The water slowed us down considerably, and I waited the worst, but then I noticed that we weren't followed. They wouldn't go inside the tunnel. We walked for, an hour, 2. The water was ice cold. Luckily, it was only about knee deep, so it wasn't too terrible. I already said that Alex didn't look well since I found him, but as we walked through, he seemed to be getting worse. He complained that his head hurt and he felt dizzy. His skin got pale and he looked very weak. After some time, I had to support him, and later, he completely collapsed and fell unconscious. We couldn't go back, so my only option was to find a way to drag him through the water. It went like this for some time, but then I heard, far away in the direction we came from, a splash. I turned and shined my light into the black tunnel. Nothing. I went to continue walking, but then I heard it again.
Hello?
I called, hoping to hear an answer. Maybe Morose was here, or did the creatures follow us after all? Nothing. I quickened my pace, but it wasn't easy dragging another person and moving through knee-deep water. The sounds continued. They weren't getting closer or further. They were just there. Then, I reached the end. The tunnel was closed off with another massive steel door and no visible way to open it. It was a dead end. I stopped moving and listened. Those sounds, it wasn't just a splash. It was more like as if someone or something was wading through the water. I panicked and started banging on the door, calling for help. I had nowhere to go. The sounds were now getting closer. I saw waves in the water. It was now very close. I slowly turned again and looked into the tunnel. I saw nothing and heard nothing. Just silence and darkness. And then, the familiar scent hit my nose. Ozone. I heard metal shift behind me, and the door opened.
Dimitri?
A familiar voice called. Morose.
What? Who is... Oh no. You brought it here?
He pulled me and Alex through the door and then shut it again as fast as he could.
That's your friend? How? What happened to him?
He asked as he looked at still unconscious Alex.
I don't know. Are you okay?
I asked back. He had a large gash across his face and his right eye.
Well, no, thanks to you.
He responded. He noticed the makeshift bandage on Alex's arm and unwrapped it. What he had on his arm wasn't just a regular wound. It was a bite mark.
That,
Moreau said and pointed at it.
Stand back.
He stood up and drew his pistol.
No, wait. At least tell me what's going on. He's going to be dead in a few minutes. This will make it easier. For him too, but mostly for us. What? Please! Is there really nothing else we can do?
I pleaded. He looked at me, looked at Alex, and then stood there, thinking for a moment. I was immediately relieved when he holstered his gun, again.
Okay, this might help him,
he said, and dug up a case with a syringe from his backpack. It looked like it was used recently, and was only about half full with a clear liquid. He injected Alex with the rest of it.
It won't matter anyway,
he said.
What do you mean? Follow me. Take him too if you want. I'm not carrying him. I guess you've probably already figured out that this all has something to do with the disaster 30 years ago,
he explained as we moved through the facility.
The first machine we used for the teleportation experiments, it wasn't powerful or reliable enough. We figured out that this whole thing wasn't as simple as it seemed. We weren't just teleporting one thing to a different place. We were transferring them between multiple parallel realities. But it was limited. We could only exchange two objects with equal mass between two identical places in two different realities. So, they built a new machine here and used a nuclear reactor to power it, hoping that we could possibly move anything to any place between two given realities. We started exploring whole new universes, saw worlds where the Germans won World War II, worlds where we all destroyed each other, even worlds where life never evolved on Earth. But then, someone had this idea. If there are these parallel universes, what's in between them? There was only one way to know, and that's when it all went wrong. As I said, we should have been happy with what we had, but we always want more, right? We tried to access this conduit reality, as they called it. But when they activated the machine, it stayed open. Something happened, and a portal was created, independent from our machine. It was sustaining itself. So, we sent a survey team in there. They came back after a few minutes, reporting all sorts of strange things, about how a strange feeling filled that place, how space and time itself felt odd, even how some of them claimed to have seen themselves in different places at once. They wouldn't go back, even if threatened with all sorts of penalties. We sent a secondary survey team later. This one didn't come back at all. So we sent a third team to find them. They came back, but something wasn't right with them when they returned. Their minds were like erased.
I pictured the blank stares of the creatures we fought on the way.
Shortly after they returned, a massive burst of energy flowed out from the portal straight up into the reactor. But that wasn't all. And you know all this because you took a sick day, right?
I asked.
I was at a different place in the facility when it happened. I'll never forget when they came to me saying, something's come through, into our world.
What was it? I asked.
I don't know. Nobody knows. It wasn't like anything we've ever seen. And it killed almost everyone here. Not just kill, it did stuff to people. You've seen. We're here.
We entered a control room filled with computers and various controls and displays. Moreau's closed another blast door and sealed us inside the room.
We need to close the portal. We have tried it before, but these things wouldn't let us.
So where are they now?
As soon as I heard that you went inside the facility and came back, I knew something was off. This place used to be full of them. At least one is still here, the smell of ozone. But a few years ago, anyone who went in wouldn't get past level -1 alive. But we've got this far, and I don't know why. That's what scares me. Something isn't right. I know that I'm asking for a lot, but we need to go inside the portal and use this.
He emptied his backpack and took out a crude-looking contraption with all sorts of wires, coils, and other bits hanging from it.
We need to place one end in the other reality and then return with the second end into ours. If it works, it might cause the portal to collapse. And how do you know that the same thing that happened to the third team won't happen to us too?
I asked.
That's the thing. I don't. But I'll tell you this. You know how they built that concrete shield over the reactor? They weren't trying to seal the reactor. They were trying to seal this place, to prevent whatever came into our world from getting out. And a few years ago, the thing we feared most happened. The shield started cracking. They were trying to get out, so they built a new containment building, as you know. But for how long will this go on? Sooner or later, something will fail, and they will get out. This might be our only chance to end this for good.
How the hell did I get into this? I thought. I was just a random guy in the wrong place at the wrong time. But Morose was talking as if the fate of our world depended on me. But maybe he was right. Whatever set of coincidences had brought us here, brought me here, maybe me and Morose were the only people who could do what needed to be done.
All right, let's do it,
I said. We put on a pair of what looked like modified spacesuits, left everything other than the device in the control room, and entered the machine. We were in a dome-shaped chamber full of complicated machinery. In the center, there was a sphere of white light. Above it, a black, hollow shaft going straight up, with cracks and debris around the opening. We tethered ourselves to a steel rail, and Morose walked forward into the sphere and vanished. After some hesitation, I did the same. I found myself in a place that I can't describe. There was no up or down, and I could walk in any direction. It looked empty, yet I could see countless infinitely large shapes with billions of tiny shiny dots on the surface.
Here,
a voice called. I looked for Morose, but I couldn't find him.
Where are you?
I called.
Come,
he said and grabbed me by the arm, seemingly out of nowhere. I noticed hundreds or thousands of other white spheres in the distance around us.
Are those? Yes, portals from other parallel realities. Are we going to close them all? No, just ours. The others are not our problem. They'll have to find their own way to handle it.
We walked towards one distinct shape. As with everything here, I struggle to describe it. It was like a fractal, the same shape repeating over and over and over again.
I think this is it,
Morose said, and started doing something with the device. It beeped several times and then started making a high-pitched hum.
Oh no, this isn't good,
he continued.
What's going on? Listen, I need you to take the other end and return. Once you're back, pull this switch and keep this button pressed until it activates. I have to stay here.
I picked up my end of the machine and watched as a wire started unreeling between the two.
What about the key to the door out?
I asked.
There is no key. What? But you said that wasn't the plan. This was always the plan. I couldn't risk.
He didn't finish. I saw something in the corner of my eye. Movement.
Shit! Don't look at it! Go! Now! Run!
Morose said, and I listened. I ran back, following the line back into our portal, with my eyes almost closed. I went through, placed the device on the ground, flipped the switch, and the device started producing a similar high-pitched noise. I pushed the button. For a second or two, nothing happened. And then, suddenly, the device, or the portal, let out an ear-piercing whine, an intense flash, and a wave of heat. And then, it was gone. Severed wires and tether line laid there on the ground, where the portal used to be. In the meantime, Alex woke up. He looked much better, and I told him what happened while he was out. We didn't know what to do now. We thought about going back and trying to cut the chain on the door outside again, but after what happened last time, we doubted that it could work. We probably wouldn't even get there alive. But then, Alex had this idea.
What if we can use the machine to teleport out of here?
It took us several hours to figure out how the controls worked. It was heavily damaged, and the reactor was obviously out of the question, but the generators above supplied enough power for a simple translocation, as they described it. All we needed to do was input a target vector. And then, the familiar clicking and smell of ozone came. A powerful slam shook the whole room and left a large dent in the steel door that connected the control room with the rest of the facility.
Fuck! Not again!
I yelled.
I think I got it! They have some vectors written down here. We just need to add some height and we'll get above ground.
Alex explained.
Make it fast!
I said as the door shook after another slam. He did something, and the controls lit up with alarms sounding. We ran to the core chamber and closed it behind us, just as we heard the control room door give way. We stood in the center and waited. Sparks and smoke filled the room as the machine did its thing. Please work. I heard another door slam, and the door to the chamber broke off the wall and fell to the ground. I looked over, and then time froze. I didn't feel fear. I felt at peace. I felt as if I was just a step away from understanding everything. I wanted to stay here, forever. A flash suddenly blinded me, and then I bumped my head into something. I opened my eyes and breathed in fresh air. We were laying upside down in a crater-like hole in the ground in a forest. We were out. We found our car after a few minutes. We saw several military helicopters fly in the opposite direction as we drove home. Alex checked in a hospital with a made-up story of an animal attack. He was okay in the end, but we didn't talk about it again. It was over, and I thought that our world was safe from whatever stayed at the other side of the portal. But when I finally returned home that day, I noticed something wasn't right. The old cherry tree that we used to play in when we were kids, it wasn't there. There was an apple tree instead. We've managed to transport an apple today. However, I couldn't help but notice the pattern of red and green skin on top was slightly different. We were transferring them between multiple parallel realities. Are we going to close them all? No, just ours. The others are not our problem. They'll have to find their own way to handle it. I think I'm not in the reality that I lived in before. I think that when we teleported out, we ended up in a different one. I can't stop thinking about how the portal in this one might still be open. I think we aren't safe.
Kendrick's eyes sparkled at the revitalizing sight of Acrion's greenish-gray surface. He was here. Finally, after all those years of training for this moment. The opportunity was now afforded to him to step on the legendary planet of Acrion. It poured so much joy into his heart as he sat admiring the image. Everything after that was a confusing mess of darkness and haggard screams. Alarms blared, and the commanding pilot shouted for them to seek safety. Kendrick could do nothing more than choke on his spit in horror. The gravity failed them as the ship careened in its tailspin toward the billowing mass of green. A massive shockwave ripped through the ship and threatened to send all of the crew to hell. But Kendrick couldn't die now. He didn't come this far to kick the bucket. Even as the silence became deafening with the crackle of sparks and the groans of nearby crew members in various tinges of pain, Kendrick pulled his jaw open in a soundless roar. A deep screech overcame his eardrums. Kendrick ripped his eyes open by the will to live. All he saw was darkness, but he was never in the dark for too long, for his ears soon rebounded with a chorus of confused voices.
Williams, you okay? Sort out the system. I need it done now. Kendrick? Kendrick!
The command pilot, Fitzgerald, shouted. Kendrick could see nothing, but he turned his head to the sound of the command pilot's voice.
I'm here,
Kendrick replied. A light blasted in Kendrick's face. He looked up and saw the overpowering figure of Fitzgerald staring down at him. Fitzgerald's voice boomed.
All right, get up. We're not dead yet.
That was not how Kendrick expected to spend the beginning of his adventure on this planet. It was several hours of chaos as they tried to make sense of what happened, and also to ensure not only the integrity of the ship, but also the evaluation of their resources. Fitzgerald was the leader of this mission, and he was not happy with their current situation. Their engines were badly damaged. The outside of the ship was not penetrated, but wasn't in good condition. At least the inside of the spaceship was fine. Everything else was peachy, outside of certain storage boxes and personal items kissing the floor after the shakedown. The communication module chirped back the robotic-sounding message from Command Central.
Your ETA for retrieval is 5 to 7 months. Take recommended protocols Command Pilot Fitzgerald, Mission Specialist Williams, and Payload Commander Kendrick. We have not abandoned you. Take care. And Godspeed.
Fitzgerald pressed a button and leaned back in the chair, not happy with that message. Ms. Williams said what nobody wanted to hear. How are we going to get back when our food stores only last us 3 months? Fitzgerald and Kendrick sat in the cockpit in different moods. While Fitzgerald was pensive with a blank stare at the diagnostic statistics flying across the screen, Kendrick shivered with excitement he could barely contain. It was Kendrick's dream to come here after all, but he couldn't deny he was a bit worried. Fitzgerald grunted and turned away from the screen.
We were only supposed to be here for 1 month.
Williams rolled her eyes. The fact that they were here was a blessing enough itself, for Acrion had a cruel climate with its hard-breathing air and haphazard landscape. It made anyone wonder why they would even want to come here. But everyone wanted to. Especially Kendrick. Kendrick said, "Well, I think we should take this time to at least evaluate our landing spot and see what's out there. Who knows? Maybe I could find some edible plants that could be grown for us to survive on. For example, the agota plant that the robots brought back as a ground fruit."
I know you want to get out there and offload your payload, because that is what we brought you on this project for. But this is not the time,
Fitzgerald said, shutting down his stream before it started. Kendrick pressed his lips together in annoyance. Fitzgerald rubbed his furrowed eyebrows and clicked his jaw as he ran whatever plan he was concocting through his mind.
All right. First thing, we check the ship, because I don't know how we crash-landed. Something happened, and there was a warning about the wing before this happened. But I can't see anything from here. Williams, take Kendrick and check.
"Yes, sir." Williams nodded in response and walked off to get changed. Kendrick was about to turn around himself, but Fitzgerald wasn't done with him yet.
Kendrick, you know the most about this planet. It's your job to help us through this and keep us safe. Understood?
Fitzgerald said. Kendrick smiled. Of course he was. He was trained for this moment. "Yes, sir. I won't disappoint." Fitzgerald nodded in acknowledgement, and Kendrick left. Within several minutes, Kendrick and Williams stepped out of the ship in their suits. They walked the dark earth, and Kendrick's sight became obscured by the darkening green fog around him. The silence rested on his mind, and not even the wind blew. Cruel was the facade painted in his thoughts, from the grotesque arches of rock and pillars. Rotund hills gathered like rolling dunes in the desert around them. Brittle rocks crackled under the weight of his boot, while this system's star barely peeked through this thick atmosphere. Kendrick glanced up and saw its white sphere blazing through the green haze, while the tall sculptures of hills and mountains bathed in its magnificence. Everything looked dead, but Kendrick knew that there was so much life on this planet. It needed to be discovered and brought back to Earth. They only got samples of microorganisms and wild plant life within the deep caverns of the planet's crust when they sent robots, with this being the first official human contact with Acrion. They could find out a lot more. Kendrick and Williams returned to the ship. She reported deep marks on the wings and the hull, but couldn't guess the source of the scoring. He was disappointed he didn't get to see more and wished he could do it today. Kendrick didn't need to be in a hurry to explore this planet. Once they went back inside, Fitzgerald and Williams organized any repairs that needed to be done, while Kendrick was given the duty of inventory checkoff. After 3 days' worth of boring tasks, Command Pilot Fitzgerald was ready to explore Acrion. Kendrick was jumping with anticipation, but controlled himself in front of the Army vet. They came out with their modular land vehicle, 2 tracker robots, and an automated drone that they were going to set up on the planet so that the command control can get updates on any changes to the locale. When the door closed behind them, the hiss of depressurization from the airlock shook Kendrick's focus. Fitzgerald motioned at him.
We don't have all day, Kendrick.
Kendrick nodded his head and joined him. They jumped into the modular vehicle and drove off into Acrion's madness. The valleys were low and the ridges frequent, so their vehicles rocked back and forth in its traverse. It should have been an uncomfortable journey, but Kendrick marveled at all the shapes within the rocks. The slopes and curves were so smooth and pure in their purpose. It was almost like a master sculptor crafted this planet, like some demented form of surrealism. Eventually, they stopped 1 mile away from the ship. There were huge boulders scattered around. They were shaped like eggs, with deep lines cut into their surface. Kendrick set up the drone as Williams, who was back at the spaceship, gave them any news she noticed on the scanners. The southeast wind is increased by 10 km per hour. Is it affecting you guys out there? Williams asked. Fitzgerald said,
No dust. Keep us posted. Hey, Kendrick, come here and look at this.
Kendrick set the instructions into the panel of the drone and went over to Fitzgerald.
What's up? Look at this. Does that look like a face to you?
Kendrick glanced down at it. Now that Kendrick was closer, he couldn't deny those carved lines looked eerily fashioned in the image of a face, complete with eyes, a nose, and pouting lips. Kendrick blinked and drew his head back in surprise, but when he looked at Fitzgerald and followed Fitzgerald's potent glare, that was when he saw that the boulders were all carved with face-like expressions. None of them had happy faces, however. Whether it was sadness or anger, one in particular had a deep gorge in the form of a mouth opened wide in horror. Fitzgerald would expect an explanation from Kendrick. Kendrick sputtered out,
The wind. I know this planet has storms from time to time, but no wind created that.
Fitzgerald spoke, never taking his eyes off that boulder. Kendrick chuckled nervously.
Well, that's an interesting assumption, but I mean, it's possible. And if it's done over millennia, yeah. Especially since there are no trees to upset the force of the wind.
Fitzgerald turned to him, face rife with disbelief.
How come we didn't pick up on this? The last exploration only went 200 yards from the landing site. We're further from the spot. Still, I don't think this means much, but it's an amazing sight.
Fitzgerald nodded.
Maybe. Take pictures of this. I'm sure Command would love to see this. Be extra vigilant. We're the first humans on this planet. I want to actually get home alive.
Kendrick rocked his head.
Yes, sir.
After they launched the drone, they made their way to a depression in the land where the deep crevices resided. Roots coursed through the earth and led to tall, decaying plants which contained jets of lava spraying in between their confines, giving them an enigmatic appearance. They seemed unaffected by the lava's billowing heat. Kendrick exited and grabbed a robot from the back as he came into the glow of the rising geyser of steaming air and bubbling lava. Kendrick set up the robots and was about to activate them when the wind picked up. The green fog swarmed lower onto the planet. Kendrick and Fitzgerald checked out the towering plants, realizing they were in fact the huge fruiting bodies of fungi. Fitzgerald regarded their chitinous exteriors gingerly, while Kendrick was excited to make the discovery. He took samples of it and had to admit, even in the plant's wall, there were a lot of deep lines. Was that a feature of this planet? For Kendrick wondered what natural effects created these grooves. They stepped away and found the entrance to a cavern. Perfect. Exploring this planet below the ground was on his to-do list. Kendrick took one step forward, and his body was racked with pain. A whistling screech cleaved through his mind. Kendrick's jaw clenched at the sensational boom it caused in his eardrums. Even though the speaker on the suit transmitted the sound of the environment around him, it shouldn't be that loud. Maybe his audio was malfunctioning, for as swift as the sound was, it was gone, and silence was left to comfort him. Fitzgerald pointed at the entrance to the cavern.
How far do you think that goes?
Kendrick replied,
Many miles. We're going to have a lot of time to explore them. Well, let's see what we've got.
Kendrick sent out the robots ahead, shining their lights, as they trailed behind the first one by 20 feet or so. Fitzgerald powered on his carry-on lamp to aid their sight. The walls of the caverns were slimy compared to the dry rock outside. Kendrick's lips parted in amusement. It was probably moisture from condensation, for when he checked the temperature, it got higher. He couldn't wait to get a sample of this substance and see what the contents were, what microorganisms might live there. There were so many possibilities. He kept hearing a cry, softer but still nauseating, for a myriad of incoherent voices crawled in his head. Kendrick froze and flicked his eyes around, seeing nothing but rock and stone. By the time they reached the large cerulean pond, so viscous in its property that it reflected their reflection perfectly, with no instance of depth to its height, they got alarms echoing in their earpieces from the temperature meter. Beyond the pond was darkness staring out at them. Fitzgerald's exhalation created crackles in the transmission.
We must be near a magma vein. Stay away from the walls.
Those voices returned, louder, but they fizzled into waves that upset his focus. Kendrick's teeth clanked against each other. His eyes went down to the pool, and he saw faces. The eclectic forms of arms and legs wavered across the still surface of the water. Kendrick's heart pounded in his head as his chest crushed under the unfathomable weight of horror.
Kendrick, step back. Now.
Fitzgerald's voice was calm, but the slow release of those words into this tense space said enough. Kendrick looked up and saw nothing over the pool, but when he looked down, they were closer. Their eyes were black holes, but their jawlines pulled apart in ferocious maws that spiraled like a whirlpool, sucking in all ounces of joy into its despair.
No. Maybe I'm seeing things. Fitzgerald, maybe we...
A screech cut through his head with such power, Kendrick lost his grip on everything. Balance, memory, and himself. A pain consumed his back when he fell onto the ground. He ripped his eyes open and rolled up into the cave, painted in a wild mix of light, either from the robots or Fitzgerald's lamp. Kendrick was confused, but Fitzgerald would drag him out of that confusion by force. Pulled up by the neck brace, Fitzgerald's hands pushed into Kendrick's back and forced him forward.
Go!
Fitzgerald bellowed. Kendrick ran through the cave, soaked in deep shadows, with the light behind him being his only guide. They rushed through the entrance of the cavern and tried navigating the deep ravines and holes on their way to the vehicle. The wind blew with more vigor, and its cries became sadder as if it wished for their demise. They left the vehicle close to the cavern, but the run back to it crept like a mile. Soon, it was in sight, and his soul was lifted. Kendrick tumbled over into it, slamming his shoulder into the car seat. He looked back and saw Fitzgerald motioning at him to start the vehicle, with the green fog thickening into a soup behind him. Kendrick ignited the vehicle, and its roar paled in comparison to the ferocity of the wind. He grabbed the wheel, and Fitzgerald threw himself into the front seat, his helmet almost bashing Kendrick out of the spinning vehicle. Driving out of the 360, Kendrick sped off down the hill. Fitzgerald took the wheel out of Kendrick's fidgeting hands. Kendrick couldn't stop shaking. He couldn't shake the emotion ripping through his body with cruel violence. His oxygen meter blared, but those sounds disappeared into the void as he drowned further into the despair that rattled him senseless. Everything was a fog up until Fitzgerald pulled his sorry behind off the vehicle and into the safety of their spaceship. Williams pulled off Kendrick's helmet, and Fitzgerald grasped Kendrick's face.
Breathe. Stay with me.
Fitzgerald asked of Kendrick. Kendrick choked after he swallowed. His throat was clogged worse. Fitzgerald nodded his head.
You okay?
Kendrick blinked and glanced around the cockpit. Fitzgerald's unwavering stare greeted him, while Williams paced like a mad patient.
I'm good,
Kendrick whispered. Fitzgerald looked behind him.
Williams, get me a review of stats. Check the cameras also. Tell me what you see.
I didn't see anything, Williams said. Fitzgerald said with more firmness.
Check again.
Williams breathed out a frustrated huff and turned on her heel. Kendrick fought the lethargy and stood up with Fitzgerald's help.
What?
Kendrick's eyes widened and he backpedaled. All over Fitzgerald's suit were long, deep marks crossing its surface. Kendrick glanced down at himself, and his suit was torn up similarly. The blood dripping from Fitzgerald's leg made it worse.
Your leg, Kendrick pointed. Come here. Look,
Williams shouted out. The two men went to her side, and when their eyes touched the screen, in the growing green fog surrounding the ship, they swore it morphed into scattered crowds of humanoid shapes before breaking up into a discombobulated mass. It did this intermittently, and he wasn't sure if this was a natural cycle or a phenomenon. Kendrick's lips twitched in hesitation to speak his mind, for his brain short-fused. Fitzgerald nudged Kendrick, shaking him out of his mental drudge.
Can you tell what's going on?
Kendrick couldn't even answer the question if he wanted to. He glanced at the measurements, steadied his breath, and focused. Kendrick said,
The graph shows there's a material form. Is that thing a ghost?
Williams asked. Kendrick shook his head.
No. Look at the numbers. It has mass. That ain't no ghost. That ain't no... I'm looking at arms and legs. Looks like a ghost to me. What if it comes in here?
Kendrick could understand Williams' fear because she kept glancing down at Fitzgerald's injured leg. She didn't want to get attacked either. Kendrick was the same. Fitzgerald cut in.
Williams, get a hold of yourself and bring up the cameras in the cave. We left them behind. I want to see something.
Williams hesitated, but after swallowing any complaint she was trying to raise, followed the order.
Kendrick, I need an explanation. What are we looking at?
Fitzgerald asked while glancing at the deep cuts in their suits. Kendrick was never under this much pressure in his life. Still, this was an amazing discovery.
I can't say right now, but it seems like they can't get inside the ship, I can say that much. See? They're gone. I don't know if it's because they can't see us or they can't detect us.
For now, Fitzgerald said.
The weeks passed like water drips from a leaky faucet. Fitzgerald's femur was badly cut, and though they cleaned up his wound, it didn't stop his fever or the subsequent inflammation of his leg. They weren't doctors, and this was the best they could do. Kendrick's life was saved by this man, but now Fitzgerald lay in the infirmary, once a towering figure, now a useless heap. He couldn't move on his injured leg, and Kendrick jury-rigged an alarm button he could use to call them if they weren't with him. Kendrick spent his days either looking after Fitzgerald or in his workstation, going over reports and stats, trying to figure out what those things were. This was not how he expected his journey into space to go. His fated journey to the planet of Acrion was a complete disaster. He couldn't even go outside. For the moment he did, he was a dead man. Or was he? Kendrick could chance it. It wasn't like they were immediately attacked when they went outside. He needed more information on what attacked them first. While Kendrick was with Fitzgerald, Williams came in with one possibility. She said, "I think it's the wind." Kendrick looked up, and so did Fitzgerald, groaning as he leaned on his side. "What wind?" Kendrick asked. Williams inhaled deeply, as if preparing herself for what she was about to say. "I think, whatever attacked you guys, it's either in the wind, or it is the wind." That was ludicrous the moment Kendrick heard it. Fitzgerald mumbled,
"As soon as we entered the atmosphere."
his face riddled with disbelief. He turned away from the crew.
"That's why we crashed."
His fist bashed into the bed's frame. Kendrick shook his head and stifled a wry smile. "Wait a minute. You're telling me the wind's alive? That's not possible. There's no way." Williams said, "It's the best idea I got. I analyzed the report of our descent. When we were coming in, there was an increase in atmospheric pressure around the area. It must be them," Kendrick said. "Well, that doesn't explain how the last two missions came to this planet and left without any consequence." So there was some inconsistency there. But as soon as he said it, his eyes widened, for there existed another inconsistency. Robots. We sent robots that time. There was no organic life or person.
"They haven't touched the robots we left in the cave?"
Fitzgerald asked. Williams shook her head. "No."
"The rescue that's supposed to come for us is human-controlled,"
Fitzgerald said. Kendrick said, "You think they're going to get shot down?" They looked into Fitzgerald's eyes and knew where his mind went. Williams and Kendrick wanted to see hope. Fitzgerald offered none.
"Tell Command what we found out. They're going to have to abort their current mission, and I don't know when they're going to send another one."
Kendrick and Williams exchanged voiceless screams through their eyes and body postures. They wanted to shout, growl, and get angry at the situation. But who would hear them? There was not a soul outside the three of them, except the ones that screamed for their destruction outside the walls of the ship. "No, we need to get off this planet. I am not staying here. You're sick, and we all have family," Williams said. Fitzgerald said, "Williams, we're already here and we can't escape. I have a wife, 2 kids. Look, I'm frightened as much as you are, but I don't want to add to the body count." Williams smiled, but it carried a hint of something else. "Body count? We're gonna become the body count if we don't do something."
"I am. It has to be an unmanned vessel. It's our best way out of here. We just have to hunker down and sit tight,"
Fitzgerald said. That sounded easy on the surface, but the spaceship that once seemed large became Kendrick's cage. Williams focused on her duties as mission specialist, rationing their chores, and Kendrick locked himself away trying to make sense of this. What was this evil wind? Did it cut the grooves in the rock and plant life here? No, there had to be an explanation for this. Kendrick left his workshop, found the damaged spacesuit, and brought it back to his station to check. The grooves were similar, deep curves, but artistic in how they spiraled in perpendicular patterns. He wondered how much force would be needed to dig into the spacesuit, so he used a knife from the kitchen. Kendrick tried digging into it without much success, only scratching the surface. If he could barely do it, how could those things do it? He looked up at the roof and saw the bland, white paint, hating it like he spat venom. It irritated him to be stuck in here, while something lurked outside trying to kill them. He was probably dead anyway, no matter how they tried to wait it out. They were going to come for him. It was only a matter of time, right? The only thing stopping them was the hull of this ship. Could it be penetrated? Was the question. Kendrick stared at the knife. He took the knife and stuck it against his forearm. Kendrick drew it through the flesh slowly, creating a deep gash. He clenched his teeth and winced from the agony of it as the knife clattered against the ground. Kendrick wrapped his bleeding arm and stared down at the knife, then at the damaged spacesuits. He confirmed one thing. Whatever entity did this damage had enough strength to strike fear in anyone, but not Kendrick. Months passed with him hypothesizing by himself, because it wasn't like he could escape this place anyways. Williams continued knocking on his door, checking on him, but it wasn't Kendrick that she should worry about. It was Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald's condition worsened, and Kendrick struggled to remain beside him just to check his slow descent into confusion. If he wasn't mumbling nonsense in angst, he was misremembering things. Command sent them updates on the unmanned rescue coming for them, but it was still 3 months away. 1 meal per day was hard on Kendrick's body, and something had to change. If people were looking for him to solve it, they would wait 1,000 years, because Kendrick had no idea where to go from here. The creativity he saw in this planet's beautiful design was something he marveled at, but was also something he lacked. Something would change, though, but it wasn't something Williams and Kendrick wanted.
Kendrick and Williams, come here.
Fitzgerald's once reassuring voice cut like a rusty saw these days, but his command never lost its sharp edge. They came to the hall where Fitzgerald leaned against the wall, his damaged leg suspended at a right angle. Williams asked, "Fitzgerald, what are you doing out of bed?" Fitzgerald breathed out,
I need to leave.
Kendrick paused while Williams rolled her eyes. She must have assumed he was going on one of his delirium-fueled rants about those monsters outside, but Fitzgerald was very lucid when he continued speaking.
I'm not getting any better. I need to leave the ship to save this mission, and possibly everyone here.
Williams shook her head and turned away. "Drink your water and stay in the bed. We're almost out of here, okay? Kendrick, help him back to the infirmary." Fitzgerald didn't answer her. He just stared into space, but Kendrick saw the answer that was already written in Fitzgerald's eyes. Kendrick said nothing about it, and by the morning after, he wished he did. The only thing he heard the next day was the piercing scream of Williams. He tumbled through the narrow passageways of the spaceship and its ugly interior to find Fitzgerald lying in a pool of blood. Kendrick wondered what was worse, stitching the open wound of Fitzgerald's brutal attack, or seeing his throat slit open in a violent rip. The kitchen knife tainted the once pure white floor with its blade soaked in blood and specks of skin stuck on the jagged edge. Kendrick was told to keep them safe, and he failed miserably at that. He wished he could have apologized, but it was too late now. Kendrick was no therapist. He could only guess Fitzgerald lost the will to live and decided to liberate them from taking care of him. In a way, it made some logical sense in his demented mind. But what he did was not only ego-driven, it was also traumatic to all of them. Now, They were going to have to sleep with this image in their minds playing on repeat like the screeching howls of the evil wind. Well, that was one less mouth to feed. Kendrick took the risk of going outside and burying Fitzgerald not only because he wanted to bury the command pilot he respected, but because he wanted to be outside. It had been 6 months, and it just felt good to get out of that cramped space and its walls closing in on him. After he covered Fitzgerald's body under some rocks and planted a flag for the new astronauts that were to come here, Kendrick looked out at the landscape and noted no fog. Light came down in huge beams upon the planet's surface. Kendrick looked back at the ship, but continued further out onto the plain. "Kendrick, you're walking too far from the shuttle," Williams said. Kendrick glanced around at the sloping valleys. "It's fine. I just want to see something." "Kendrick, get back here now. We don't know what that thing is." "I just want to check out something. I don't think it's the wind. Maybe it's in the fog." "Kendrick, please," Kendrick said to himself. The light is out. When the sun is up, the fog is less. The wind picked up, and that screech returned, causing his jaw to shudder. His eyes adjusted to the swarming shadows when the light got cut off by the fog. Edges of the fog got closer to him. Williams called out his name, but his mind soon became a deep marsh due to its audible treble. Kendrick inhaled, and his shoulders relaxed in the embrace of the sound. He glanced around and breathed easier. The faint calling of his name faded as the green mist bloomed around him. Around him were faces, many of them, all of them sad and disappointed. They stared at him. Kendrick couldn't move. Alarms blared. They soon overwhelmed his ears more so than Williams' pleas. That was when the heart-wrenching pain set in. His eyesight blurred, while black spots grew from the edges of his vision. The suit leaked oxygen, and he inhaled his last breath. Thankfully, it was the air of Acrion.
In the dimly lit cabin aboard the ship, Jasper's eyes were locked onto the map of Alaska. The vessel swayed gently, adding to the tension as he plotted their course into the unknown. Time was running out. He was due to meet with the captain soon, and Jasper needed to be certain about where to begin. Jasper Cummings, a fair man with dark hair and piercing emerald eyes, was a meticulous navigator who rarely made mistakes. But in situations that demanded caution, he took extra measures to ensure nothing went awry. He studied the map carefully, making precise notes to prevent future errors. However, he knew that maps could only reveal so much. To truly understand a place, one needed to be in the heart of it, or at the depths of the sea. For a while now, this particular location had been haunting him. He scrutinized the map, his eyes fixated on the Gulf of Alaska. Tracing a finger along the Gulf, he searched for a path, though deep inside, he knew there was none. This was where two oceans met, but never fully converged, a breathtaking and perilous phenomenon. The task he intended to undertake was treacherous, but someone had to do it. Jasper resolved that if any explorer was to earn the glory of uncovering the secrets beneath the Gulf, it would be him. He raised his eyes from the map, taking in the vibrant world map on the wall that showcased the extent of his voyages and explorations. The cabin's walls were adorned with exotic items and artifacts he had found on his travels. It was as if a treasure trove awaited him, beckoning him to claim it. He recognized the danger of his pursuit, but it only fueled his determination. This was his destiny, his dream, and the time had come to seize the opportunity to etch his name into the annals of history. A sudden knock at the door jarred him from his thoughts.
Come in,
he called. The door creaked open, revealing Captain Morrison. Dressed casually in light brown trousers and a blue shirt with white piping, the captain's attire complemented his tan skin. His curly blonde hair was neatly tied back, and his green eyes gleamed as they scanned the cabin. Despite their initial rocky relationship, Jasper had come to greatly admire Captain Morrison's command.
You wish to see me?
Jasper inquired, the air heavy with suspense. Morrison nodded gravely.
Indeed, Mr. Cummings. Progress on the ship has been slow, particularly since you unilaterally brought aboard a new crew member without consulting us. We should have discussed it together.
Jasper dismissed his concern with a shrug.
We needed more hands, that's all. Besides, it's hardly a complex matter. I assumed you knew what was best. I'd rather not deal with the other men anyway.
I understand,
Morrison replied, the tension in the room palpable.
And remember, new crew member will ultimately benefit us all. Now, what's so crucial that you've brought us out here?
Jasper's voice lowered, adding to the suspense.
This may sound strange, but I aim to uncover the secrets beneath the Gulf of Alaska.
He gestured to the map on the table beside him. Morrison raised an eyebrow, incredulous.
Beneath the Gulf? Is that truly necessary, Mr. Cummings? I thought you claimed to know what lay there already.
Jasper shook his head.
Not entirely. I've seen some things, but I wasn't the only one to notice something peculiar about this gulf. Numerous explorations halt at a specific depth.
And with good reason,
the captain interjected.
But why never beyond that? That's the question I seek to answer with this expedition. I suspect someone else may have discovered something, but was too awestruck to share. If we find anything, it could launch our next grand adventure, or, as you'd prefer, our return home.
Captain Morrison sighed, leaning against a nearby desk, his arms crossed.
Mr. Cummings, my ship isn't equipped for the type of expedition you're proposing. We'd have to wait until next year to explore deeper. Even if we found what you're seeking, we might not be able to manage it if it's something substantial.
Jasper's excitement waned, but he tried to hide his disappointment.
Apologies if I've let you down, but tell me, why do you doubt this? You've been exploring the ocean depths for years, haven't you?
Morrison hesitated, uncertain how to respond.
You've witnessed wonders and sights beyond human imagination, and we've accomplished that together. Look, I'm not asking you to abandon your duties on this journey, Captain. Just entertain the possibility. There must be something down there, something yet to be discovered. I know the way, but I need you to support our exploration from above.
Morrison finally nodded, considering the proposal.
As you wish.
Jasper nodded in return.
Thank you. I'll have my team prepared.
Captain Morrison nodded once more and exited the cabin, leaving Jasper alone with his thoughts. Absent-mindedly, he rubbed his chin as his gaze fell upon the sea chart where he had marked his previous discoveries. The mystery of the Gulf of Alaska lay before him, waiting to be unraveled. If the enigmatic energy source truly lay hidden in the deep, they might be close, but it could also be nothing of consequence. Jasper pondered whether it could be one of those peculiar energy deposits in the depths. Regardless, he was determined to prove its origins. The time approached for Jasper to leave his cabin and venture to the last site in the Gulf of Alaska. He would finally confront the mystery and uncover the truth behind the whispers he had heard. Perhaps then, he could return triumphant. With unwavering resolve, Jasper finalized his plans and sought out his team of 10 divers who awaited him in the canteen area. As he entered, they all rose to their feet, and Jasper acknowledged each of them before addressing the group. "Are you all ready?" he inquired.
Yes, sir!
They answered in unison. Jasper nodded. "All right. See you on the deck in 10. Precisely 10 minutes later, Jasper and his team assembled on the ship's deck, donning their diving suits as some of Captain Morrison's men helped secure oxygen tanks to their backs. The water around the vessel was eerily calm, as if it were adrift in the open ocean. A sinking feeling gripped Jasper's stomach as he contemplated the possibility of something going awry. He preferred to avoid such doubts, but he was prepared. Silently, they waited for instructions, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Jasper hoped and prayed that his instincts were right, that this was truly happening. The need to discover the truths about the depths below consumed him. He needed to satisfy this gnawing desire. Jasper and his team checked their equipment one last time. Captain Morrison offered a single nod, and Jasper reciprocated before staring ahead, resolute. Raising his right hand, Jasper signaled his silent command, and the divers plunged into the waves, following a path into the Gulf. As Jasper reached the heart of the Gulf, he was enveloped in darkness, the inky void stretching out below him. His heart raced, anxiety mounting. Yet, this was the thrill of the job. He ventured into a part of the ocean undisturbed for eons. Excitement bubbled within as he contemplated the discoveries that lay below. His divers trailed behind, guided by the lights they carried. Before long, the darkness swallowed the lights, making it difficult to discern which belonged to whom. Still, he pressed onward. As the distance between them shrank, the gloom became impenetrable, and Jasper's eyes strained to discern any shape or form that might guide him. But the water remained a black abyss before him. All he could do was tread water, cautiously avoiding any forward movement and desperately hoping not to collide with anything hidden in the depths. Once more, a sense of foreboding slithered through Jasper's veins as he considered what might await them. He continued to tread water, endeavoring to maintain a steady pace while swimming in a straight line, acutely aware of his team following closely. The impenetrable darkness of the deep unsettled Jasper, igniting a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. It was as if something was watching from the shadows, something that could see clearly in this environment, something that harbored ill intentions. How deep was the Gulf's base? Would they ever escape these depths? What if they were running out of air or became trapped? Why hadn't they found it yet, as he had? He endeavored to banish these thoughts, knowing they were futile to dwell upon. What mattered now was navigating through this uncharted territory, confronting the ever-present fear of the unknown. Jasper yearned to uncover the secrets of this region, the strange energy it seemed to emanate. Answers were worth the risk, at least for him. His mind drifted to an ancient myth regarding the abyss, a fabled place of mystery and knowledge. It sounded preposterous now, but perhaps there were other enigmas yet to be revealed, secrets of nature that would captivate even his fellow explorers. As he pondered, he wondered if there were other sources of energy or undiscovered creatures lurking in this enigmatic realm. Perhaps those who had vanished centuries ago had not perished from natural causes, or maybe something even more bizarre hid in the darkness, lying in wait to strike. Regardless, Jasper's priority was solving this puzzle and returning everyone home safely. All else could wait. His focus now was on finding what he sought. At last, Jasper discerned the Gulf's base, a massive shadow looming in the deep. Relief surged through him. After the anxiety and uncertainty surrounding their descent, this sight felt like a harbinger of success. Still, he couldn't shake the sensation that something else was amiss. Strange lights flickered above them, and within seconds, Jasper recognized their source. They were his team of divers, and by his count, he was relieved to find that none had gotten lost or vanished under mysterious circumstances. Jasper raised his hand, brandishing the torch, and signaled for the group to halt. The divers came to an immediate stop.
Everyone, I believe we have arrived,
Jasper announced. The divers found their footing on the Gulf's base, and Jasper instructed them to split into pairs and watch each other's backs. Unbeknownst to him, he stood upon a peculiar symbol, one he had never seen before, reminiscent of a long-lost language. When he touched it, the entire base shuddered as if an underground earthquake was rumbling beneath them. Startled, the divers, including Jasper, glanced downwards to discover that it wasn't just water below them. There was something else, something unyielding and uncorroded. A door, or something akin to it. Jasper signaled his team, and they cautiously approached. However, it could have been a trap. As Jasper and his team swam towards the door, the water around them began to churn and swirl, dragging them in. Terror seized Jasper as the powerful current pulled them deeper and deeper into what appeared to be a tunnel. Their oxygen masks muffled their shouts and expressions of fear as they descended, eventually landing on what could only be solid metal ground. Disoriented, Jasper opened his eyes to find the area faintly illuminated. He realized they were in an underground facility, lit by evenly spaced circular white lights hanging from a black metal ceiling. One of his team members voiced the question on everyone's mind.
What is this place?
Oddly enough, Jasper already knew the answer.
I think it's some secret underground facility. Perfect,
said West.
Now we've indeed stumbled into the unknown.
The water that had sucked them into the place began to recede. Tim inquired,
Where's the water going to? You discover an underground secret facility in the Gulf of Alaska, and your first thought is to ask where the water is going to?
Fred retorted.
We've always wanted to be here. This is part of the exploration. Best we seize the opportunity to make our discovery.
Minutes ago, Jasper would have agreed with Fred's enthusiasm, but now he felt something akin to emptiness, accompanied by a sudden urge to worry. Regardless, they pressed onward, venturing deeper into the unknown. As they entered a vast room nearly the size of a football field, Jasper and his team froze at one of the entrances. Before them stood rows of glass cylinders on circular metal platforms, each connected by a web of wires. Green, bubbling liquid filled the cylinders, and within them floated naked humans, wires attached to the back of their heads. The sight sent a shudder down Jasper's spine as the gravity of their discovery began to sink in. Jasper's heart raced at the sight of the helpless, seemingly unconscious individuals suspended in the mysterious liquid. Dark thoughts swirled in his mind. Who had done this to them? What purpose did it serve? How long had they been trapped like this? Were they even alive? And why here, of all places?
Oh God! I can't believe this!
Garrett exclaimed. Jasper knew that whoever was responsible sought to keep this hidden from the eyes of the public. Was it a corporation or the government? It was hard to tell. Regardless, it seemed illegal. These people appeared to be guinea pigs, lifeless and trapped within their glass prisons. He couldn't help but imagine their torment, utterly helpless and unaware of their own existence, with no chance of ever being heard. It seemed they couldn't speak, let alone move. There were so many of them. What was the goal of the people who had brought them here? Jasper shook his head, refusing to dwell on these dark thoughts. They needed to find a way to escape, and quickly. He addressed his team.
We need to look for documents, systems, anything that will give us further insight into what's going on here. And most importantly, we have to find a way to free these people. That's if they're not dead,
Daniel added grimly. Jasper shook his head again. There had to be some evidence or trace of what had happened here. They surveyed the room, taking in the various equipment clearly designed for extracting information. Computers, machines, and other devices hummed and whirled on the platforms. A control panel, likely for operating the machinery, stood near the entrance. He ran his hand over the panel, adjusting levers, knobs, and dials. With one final twist, a whirling sound emanated from above, and a light shone down Jasper's face. A loud clicking noise filled the air, and the lights abruptly switched off. His heart pounded in his chest.
Is that supposed to happen?
Fred asked quietly. The group held their breath, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. Jasper approached one of the glass cylinders for a closer inspection. As he peered into it, he realized that what was inside was far different than what he had initially thought. The beings inside were massive, not quite giants, but much larger than any human. Their faces, if they had any, were obscured by the bubbles. Their skin was a deathly pale, and they seemed frozen, motionless, and as silent as the glass that contained them. Jasper's blood ran cold as fear gripped him. What were these creatures, and what terrible secrets had they uncovered? The need to understand the nature of these strange beings became imperative. The team scrambled to investigate the facility, keeping their communication channels open as they went.
Hey guys, we got something.
Amanda called out.
There are some weird-looking beings here.
Fred's voice crackled through the comlink.
I see them too. They're not human at all. They don't seem to breathe. They just seem still, like statues.
Dread surged through Jasper, more potent than ever.
What are you guys saying?
Jasper could hear Tim breathing hard over his comms.
Guys?
Tim said.
I think one of these things is awake. It just stared. Tim!
Jasper shouted.
Get out of there! Sir, you said to find something that would help us understand this place. I believe I'm close to knowing what that is.
Jasper hadn't anticipated this act of defiance. It was only now that he realized he might have put his team in harm's way. Suddenly, the entire facility quaked violently, as if a child were shaking a toy. Jasper and his team were thrown about, crashing into the metal and glass cylinders. A distant growl reverberated through the air, followed by the sound of metal screeching and groaning, as if being torn apart. Jasper's heart raced. The rest of the team reconvened with Jasper without needing to be called.
What was that?
Elizabeth asked. Fred glanced around.
We still haven't found a way out of here. Surely we can't go back the same way we came, seeing that we came in through a tunnel.
Maybe.
Jasper replied, his voice faltering as he tried to calm himself.
But we'll have to try. Just stay together. We need to find a way out of here.
As Jasper took a step forward, the walls around them started to shudder. Glass cylinders toppled from their metal stands, shattering on the ground. The beings inside bore no resemblance to humans whatsoever. The water swirled around them, and the lights began to flicker back on.
Something is trying to get us,
West said. Jasper started to run.
Let's go. No!
Elizabeth screamed.
We need to stay here!
Why?
Garrett asked.
Because we need to know what it is, and be able to ascertain whether we can fight against it.
As the entire facility shook, the violent vibrations sent them tumbling to the ground.
We won't be able to fight against that.
Amanda warned.
We have to find a way out of here, and fast, before whatever it is calls the water and closes in on us.
The idea seemed perfect. They still had enough oxygen to make it to the surface. However, if any part of this facility collapsed on them, they'd be done for.
We need to get out of here,
West urged, but they all stood frozen, unsure what to do.
We've got nowhere to go!
Fred shouted.
What about the doors?
Everyone stared at one another, paralyzed by fear. Courage was absent now, and Jasper's legs felt like jelly, his arms like ropes. He scanned the facility, wondering how it had been constructed, how long it took, and who was behind it. What had happened here to make the place crumble around them? A chilling realization struck Jasper. What if the people who built this place had run into trouble? It would explain the abandoned appearance. Had they escaped alive, or had whatever stalked this facility devoured them? Jasper couldn't shake the sense of impending doom as the shaking intensified, and he knew they had to find a way to escape this nightmare. Suddenly, a deafening blast shook the facility, followed by a series of explosions that threw Jasper and his team to the ground. Through the haze, Jasper thought he saw the creatures from the glass cylinders stirring. As his vision cleared, fire engulfed the beings, obscuring them from view. Shielding his eyes, Jasper heard gunfire. A line of men in black diving suits with full military gear rushed in, forming a barrier before them and opening fire on the mysterious creatures. Yet, somehow the beings seemed unscathed by the onslaught. The soldiers fired grenades and released gaseous substances before grabbing Jasper and his team, guiding them back the way they came. Why was the military here? What was happening? Chaos reigned as they desperately sought to escape from the unknown horrors below. They escaped the facility and plunged back into the inky depths of the Gulf of Alaska. A severed, monstrous appendage, a clawed foot or hand, spun dangerously close to Jasper. If not for the soldier guiding him in another direction, it would have struck him. Jasper wanted to inform the soldier about their ship waiting on the surface, but his attention was caught by two torpedoes streaking past him. They boomed through the darkness, striking the underground facility. He glanced towards the source of the torpedoes and spotted a submarine shrouded in darkness, partially concealed. Suddenly, it dawned on him. They had been here before his team arrived. They were the unseen eyes watching in the darkness, guarding the facility to prevent its destruction. Now, everything was spiraling out of control, and Jasper's name would be lost in the chaos. His previous curiosity transformed into concern as he spotted a thin, snake-like tendril materializing in the dark water. The tendril twisted and stretched into multiple strands, forming an arch overhead. Jasper watched it grow longer, reaching for the submarine. The volley of torpedoes raced towards the tendrils and whatever lay hidden in the darkness behind them. The tendrils wrapped tightly around the submarine, but a deafening boom and a high-pitched shriek echoed through the water. The tendrils released their grip, disappearing back into the darkness. Jasper's world swirled, and the next thing he knew, he was lying on the floor of the submarine, having succumbed to shock and exhaustion. A stern-faced military officer looked down at him before giving instructions to the armed, masked soldiers still in their diving suits.
Take him to the infirmary,
he ordered. The soldiers saluted and obeyed. 2 days later, Jasper found himself before the officer who turned out to be the captain. The metal walls of the submarine betrayed their location, and the only light in the captain's office came from a fixture on the ceiling. The captain looked up from the files on his desk and gestured for Jasper to sit. After dismissing the soldiers who had escorted Jasper, the captain met his gaze.
How do you feel, Mr. Cummings?
You know my name? Jasper said, though he shouldn't have been surprised. This was the military. They probably knew everything.
Well, I make it a point to know everything around me, Mr. Cummings. It's part of the job,
the captain said. Jasper nodded. Well, as you can see, I'm fine.
Indeed, you are. I had the doctor keep me posted because I needed to know if there was a change in your condition.
Jasper knew the captain's concern wasn't genuine. They just wanted to ensure his silence regarding what he had witnessed in the Gulf of Alaska.
I did a little digging on you,
the captain continued.
Your file says you're a researcher and an explorer. I suppose that explains your journey to the Gulf of Alaska.
Jasper averted his eyes, focusing on the table. The captain chuckled. Are we your prisoners, Captain? Jasper asked, meeting the captain's stare.
No, you're not. However, I do have to debrief you,
the captain replied. I'm not part of the military.
You don't have to be. I could have left you and your team there to die, but I didn't.
Because you know what's down there, don't you? You silence every explorer who comes down, eager to make a discovery. I saw the facility. I saw those things, whatever they are. They're not human. They had no faces. What were they?
And you just expect me to tell you? Clearly you don't know where you are, but I'll enlighten you. Sometimes, Mr. Cummings, nature prefers to be left alone.
Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. That site was protected. You're not the first explorer to venture there, but you're among the fortunate few who have lasted so long. You're lucky we were there. You wouldn't have survived what you awaited in the dark.
Jasper's eyes widened slightly.
Yes,
The captain continued.
we encountered it when we arrived. We had support from a destroyer on the surface. It helped us with the depth charges to distract the creature when it tried to enter your facility.
He sighed.
You were truly lucky.
And you think keeping this secret will protect people? Jasper challenged. Explorers are curious by nature. They'll keep coming, eager to uncover what's hidden down there.
That's why we have the Navy. Revealing the truth could cause worldwide panic, so it's best to keep it hidden. Everything you saw down there is part of our world now. The government has decided to buy your silence. You'll sign a contract agreeing not to disclose what you saw.
And if I do tell someone?
Then, Mr. Cummings, you'll disappear. The government can make that happen. You won't be killed, but the day you reveal the truth will be the last time you see the light of day.
The captain handed Jasper a document. Jasper signed the document and pushed it back.
Actually, one more thing.
The captain added.
You may want to avoid this place. As you know, it harbors many dangers, and what you witnessed was only a fraction of the true mystery lurking below.
A chill ran down Jasper's spine at those words.
You're free to go,
said the captain.
I hover in the overwhelming pressure of the Pacific Ocean. Nothing feels better than being underwater. It's quiet, peaceful, and I think that silence is the secret to life. Sometimes it's best to see nothing at all and just appreciate the moment.
Oliver, you done sightseeing?
Liam's voice cut through the prior silence in the speakers. I grunted my partner Liam.
Just give my prayers to the sea gods, you know? Boy, you're crazy.
Maybe I am, but our mission is way more fun and crazier. This science group hired me and Liam to help with uncovering these ruins off the coast of Indonesia. Called the Poseidon Project. It's a dive into a newly uncovered civilization that has never been seen before. My pal Liam and I were divers for a living. I was excited to be participating in this. It's way more exciting than teaching diving lessons to old people. What I did not expect was the TV crew, but the leader of the operation, Mr. Ashbury, wants to document this amazing discovery as much as he wants to uncover it. Obviously, it pays for a part of the excursion, so I cannot complain. I swim over the grass, popping out of the crevices and corals. These blades of grass wave at me in their strong current. I stop over the darkness that digs into the earth, revealing the 5-mile ravine crossing this part of the sea's bed. The cameras move on long arms and toward the edge of tomorrow under the control of the operator. They have fog lights and have been a great help in cutting through a path for us. Liam dives under me and over the edge. The fog light blasts into the ravine and Liam slithers down it. My flashlight is on my arm sleeve. I can barely reach further than several feet, but it is still useful. This forgotten civilization reveals itself through the husks of the buildings that cross the length of the sandy floor. These buildings are so different, like some strange cubic painting. They shift from the odd circular impressions that seep into the metal to the larger bastion constructions with sculptures of animal craft within. The most amazing thing is that these were not built with stone, but metal. Not just any metal. It is titanium, and Mr. Ashbury dated them to the time of 1200 BC. This is truly a one-of-a-kind discovery, for titanium was not mined in those times, much less used as a building material, especially to the extent that this ancient city was built up. We shouldn't have even found this place.
It was tucked away nicely and neatly out of sight in the dark depths of this ravine. I dip into those shadows and let them overcome me. My light glows and reveals my steps into the streets of this place. Ashbury cannot tell us who built this city yet, but we're gonna find out for sure.
Hey, you see the tower?
I look up as I bounce into the circle. Unknown symbols circle the length of it, while the center column is a huge rectangular prism. It is laden with deep impressions of a language we know little about. Under the tower is a huge enclave of rock where much of this mysterious city is fallen into. Many sections of it have been sent to various parts of the ravine, and it is hard to piece much of it together with its instability. Liam stands under the shadow of the tower.
You see this?
Looks amazing. Bring the camera around. Record this. I'll collect the artifacts. We get to work doing our various tasks. I pick up vases, jars, and sharp instruments like spears, many of which are broken. These weapons are quite intricate in their design, with symbols in an amber tint. An oscillating sound buzzes through my speaker. I blink in surprise and turn around to watch the darkness. Something made that sound. But what was it? There isn't anyone here except the diving team and a random tuna fish shooting past me. I hear the distant cracks of the steps we make, but the oscillating screech phases in and out of my earshot like some symphony. My eyes catch sight of a twinkling light in the darkness. What is that? My feet move on their own. I turn up the power of the flashlight. It reveals a room that collapsed in upon itself with deep lines breaking out from the center. The center holds a stone pillar. My body shivered from the frigid atmosphere that hit me. It was tough for me. Around that pillar are spheres engraved with strange inscriptions. I touch the pillar and see the dust transfer onto my glove.
Hey, are you done?
Liam's voice buzzes into my speaker. I reach down and grab two metallic-like spheres.
Yeah, let me wrap these up.
Once we're done, we swim out of the dark corridors of this place. We reach the base complex, which is partially under the sea. I swim up into the diving platform. Liam comes out behind me and pulls off his mask to gasp.
Whew. Glad to be back.
I stroke to the edge and pull myself out. My gear is taken off in the changing room as the camera's trolley moves up the platform and breaks the water's roof. The crew disperses through different areas of the base after they clear the artifacts from the carriage bay. We go below deck together to grab some refreshments. Everywhere I go, these cameras be following me. I punch Liam, my co-star, and pal, on the shoulder. On cue, the camera team roll in ready to detail our conversation, which makes me wonder if this is all necessary. Recording while we're swimming around the remnants of the fallen civilization is one thing, but these guys are pressing us even when we're relaxing. The only alone time I can get is in my bedroom, and that's not much. He laughs and scratches the back of his head.
It's whatever. I don't give a damn about all that. I just want to hit the water. After this, who knows? We might become famous.
It won't be us people will be talking about. It'll go hard for those conspiracy believers out there, and we'll be paid a ton of money if we can keep this on the air.
Oh, yeah? Ain't gonna lie. The city could never be built by humans. You see those metal streets? It has to be extraterrestrials.
I'm not sure if that is true, but a part of me will not be surprised if it is. Looking at the civilization, the scale and extravagance it was built with far exceeded any ancient civilization on this earth. I wondered how they ended up at the bottom of the sea. How did their city fall apart like that? The metal streets should be impossible to break. There are a lot of unanswered questions. Ashbury's theory is that an earthquake or tsunami hit their paradise island. Whether it was the lost city of Atlantis or something entirely different, Ashbury wasn't sure. All he could say was that it was most likely a powerful city-state. He even said that it may have been this civilization that was infamously called the Sea People. It was notorious for the destruction of the Hittite and Assyrian empires, though that legend indicated humans, specifically the people of Egypt, defeated them. Who knows what happened?
I'm going to sleep.
All right. See you later.
He nods his head, taking a sip of his soda. I go to my bedroom and sleep for an hour before loud knocking shakes me out of my sleep. When I open the door, I see Liam.
Hey, Ashbury's calling for you. You got to check this out. Something you brought back might have hit the jackpot.
Which pottery could I have brought back that got him hot and bothered? As I'm about to find out, it is the metallic-looking balls, and they're glowing on the table when I enter the room. The pretty average-looking dude in a t-shirt and shorts is Mike Ashbury. His hair is long and straight, brushing his neck. He's got a brown and gray Hulk Hogan mustache, just not the Hulk Hogan body type. He says, "Took you long enough. Where'd you find this?" He waves at the cameraman and they come closer, so he made sure that they do not miss this moment. It felt impersonal to me. It was a room that was some distance away from the ritual circle. Thinking about it now, the thing that I remember the most was how cold it was. Other than that, it looks like many of the rooms we saw in the houses and buildings. Nothing special. Ashbury nods his head as he turns back to the spheres. The light that is glowing comes from the inner impressions carving inside of it. "Were they glowing like this when you found them?" he asks. Hell no. I'm still wondering myself what this is about. Maybe the paint inside the grooves is affected by the open air.
Maybe. I'm going to do some analysis on it. Are you willing to go out and check that place again?
Like right now? His lips curled into a smile.
Yes. The crew wants to see the place. They never got any footage of the site where you've gotten them from.
I was too mesmerized by the place to even remember them. But more than that, a part of me was wary of bringing them there. Something about that place really strikes an uncompromising chord with me. I point at the glowing balls. What do you think they are? Ashbury says, "Not sure." We didn't have to wait long to see what it really was. The inscriptions stopped glowing. Everyone stares at it. That is when that oscillating sound penetrates my consciousness. I suddenly felt that I do not want to be here anymore. All right, tell the camera crew to saddle up. I'm leaving in 5 minutes. I spin out of the room and my stomach starts lurching, but I push down the developing bile. The sickness that is plaguing me hurts my head, but I keep moving. I go below the base and swim up to a sliding door attached to the underbelly of the vessel. It creaks open, and we swim down into the chamber. We went from the base and into the ravine. I lead the way with the camera close behind, then I move from the ritual circle to the hidden enclave. As soon as I step in, the cold arrests my limbs. My diving suit is not doing a good job of protecting me right now. The camera's fog light blasts behind me. I can see this room more clearly now. My eyes widen to see those paintings high on the roof. Figures, animalistic in form, coat the surface. Whoever these people were, they loved their animals. I tilt my head and mutter, "Hold up." I glide across the dusty divide and reach a door that is barely seen, for it lays behind a large column and lingers off the edge of a deeper drop. My hand presses into a hole, and I pull the large door open as if it is on a slide. It creaks open, and the ocean floor seems to split apart. I walk into a new room with a transparent roof. The transparent roof has an ice-like structure, but if I am to take a guess, I'd say that it is stronger than any ice that has ever existed. And that's not even the worst part. There are strange statues and paintings of these odd-looking figures doing various activities. Some figures look like they are tilling the land, while others are at war with paintings that look like us humans. This is bewildering. A haunting, scraping sound echoes throughout this space. I hear yelps from the cameraman behind me. My eyes narrow and flick around. My mind and body detach for a moment, and I forget that I am standing in a decrepit city. The memories in that city are not dead historical references as I thought. When that oscillating sound hits me again, my eyes almost close and I do not catch the shadow in front of me. I drift back in surprise. A tall creature with lanky arms hovers toward me. My heart stops, and my chest bursts in congestion. I freeze, unsure of what to do. Is this some kind of sea creature? As it moved toward the center of the room, I witnessed its horrendous glory. Its movements are slower and ghost-like, but there's no mistake. This is in fact the strange figure in the paintings on the wall. The hand has web-like suckers gesturing toward me. It reminds me of the tentacles of an octopus. Then that arm shoots over my head. I spin around to see the cameraman rising up as that arm wraps around his neck and chokes him. The camera arm falls over and hits the ground. Breaking glass and the resounding thud of metal shakes me out of my insanity. My heart hasn't been suffocated yet, so between it and my brain, they're the only thing I care about. It pounds beneath my skin. I never swam so fast in my life. Streams of the sea flow around me in aggression as bubbles swept up from my breaststroke. Those bubbles do not hide the shapes around me. Figures are swimming up and surround me. My chest beats with a blasting tempo. There is a myriad of these creatures, and some face one direction as they surround the base. Lines appear on the ocean floor. Those lines, I realize, are cracks. The wider the cracks expand, the louder the oscillating noise, until something akin to thunder ripples the water. It is from these cracks that these strange creatures swim out from. I do not look back, and keep going toward the goal. The waves of the sea push out from my stroke. They become mere dots to me. The faster they pass by me, the better. It's surprising how quickly I reach the complex, despite how slowly they're moving. It's like there's a magnetic source pulling me in. The closer I get, the more my body swells with pressure and heat. I need to warn them. With my arms still free, I grab hold of the ladder leading up the tunnel. It is close now. All I have to do is get up the chamber. I'm not sure, but it's my only hope. Clutching onto grooves inside the bar, despite it tearing into the tips of my fingers, I close my eyes and wish for a miracle. But despair hits me when my fingers rip off and go back down into the water. Arms wrap around me. I try to escape. My lower half stretches and my back pulls apart. The helmet cracks. Gritting my teeth as my tears find a home in the salt water, I use every last bit of strength I have to keep hanging on. My shoulders push outward and break the hold on me. I swim up and grab the bar again. The surface is as slippery as hell now. Water spews through the cracks in the helmet's glass and hits me in the nose. It's a struggle just trying to not let go. Pressing my lips together and filling my cheeks up with air, I strain against the defeat quickly approaching. The middle of my hand tingles, and my heart plummets. This is it. I can't hold on any longer. A cry shatters my peace before I shoot up out of the water and onto the platform's metal-glazed floor. I gasp and with a start pull off my helmet. That's when I sit up, and that ugly creature surges out of the sea. In the glare of the lights above me, its eyes are dark blue, but with the head of a meat-eating carnivore. I am not staying here to say hi. It growls at me. My oxygen tank is thrown off. I run out of the room and turn the metal door into its face. The door shakes from the force of its ram and sent me to the ground. I drop to the ground and glare up in surprise at the door vibrating from that wild beast's vigorous attempt to kill me. Ashbury. I need to get to him. I shout, "Help!" There is no reply. The underwater base is not that big. They should have heard me. I walk away from that door and try to find any of the other workers. That is when I notice how silent this place is. Where is everyone? I swallow my fear and keep going. The further I go, the more water I tread. This place is taking on so much water. I need to get out of here, but not without the others, and definitely not the way I came through. Ashbury is the first person I'm going to, so seeing anyone else will be nice, but unnecessary. So I go to his last known location, to find the hall leading to that room in a mess. A mangled crust of the metal door and broken shards of metal lay on the floor. At this point, I don't know if I should be afraid or not. My heart blasts in my head a sound worthy of a cruel melody. I step forward regardless. When I reach around the bend, I see blood. A lot of it. But nobody is in there. Not even those balls with their strange inscriptions are here. I don't like this at all. Leaving that room, I turn into the opposite end of the hall and see the blood trail. I can use that. Following it is easy enough, but the surrounding screeches and groans of this failing base make me more anxious. Every step I take, the louder they get. It's like those things are trying to break in. I need to get out of here long before that. The blood trail ends up being quite important, for as soon as I turn around a door, my eyes lock onto a sight that stops my heart. Ashbury is lying against the wall with a bloody wound along his neck. Ashbury! I rush to him.
You came back.
He says weakly. Who did this to you?
You tell me. I don't know what it was. It broke into the base and attacked us. I can say one thing about that creature. That once those artifacts you brought in, they took one. Liam has the last one.
Why would they want that? Ashbury groans as he stands up.
Only one way to find out.
We get out of that room and hear a loud screech. It was a loud and creaking groan, so Ashbury and I froze in the hall. We try to make no sound, but that is hard with Ashbury's restrained breathes and the drips of water from my scuba suit. Nothing comes out of the dark corners of this place, and we continue on our way. Light flickers as we make soft but hurried steps. I look behind every open door to make sure we don't get a surprise, because those unnerving sounds are too close to us. We move quickly to the highest chamber to avoid the rising water. That is where we see Liam standing on a glass floor over what is the drop chamber, which happens to be one of our exits. The underground base rolls as the increasing supply of water destabilizes it. This is not good as I slide from side to side. My hands push against the wall to prevent myself from tumbling over. The growls we hear are not from a dog, that is for sure. I shout, "Liam!" Liam turns to us, and that is when I see the ball in his hand. The floor shakes under him when something hits it. That oscillating sound hits me again. It makes me blink, but I shake my head and throw it off.
Get out of here!
Liam shouts, "I'm not leaving you. Come on, walk to us." Liam gestures toward us. We turn around and look up at the overpowering height of this creature. What kind of nightmare did I drop into? This one pushes me over and smacks Ashbury. Ashbury crashes into the wall and falls to the ground. Blood seeps from his head. The base's destabilization gets worse. My head slams against the wall with every turn. The lights spark and blink before going out. Liam cries out, but I can't see him. I want to tell him to run, but my tongue twists. If I try to speak right now, I will bite my own tongue off. I know it. Keeping my hands above my head, I try to steady myself and secure my neck. I pretend I'm just rolling in a barrel, a hard barrel that keeps slamming. My brain knocks loose. I feel something trickle from my nose. It was blood. After what seems like a lifetime, the underground bass stops rolling. There's a ringing in my ears. I can't tell which way is up or down as I scramble around to find my feet. My hand is wet with something sticky, and I already know what it is. Liam? My voice shakes as I crawl up, trying to find my way through this annoying place. The pipes are loose and cracks form along the wall. When I do manage to get up, I slip and slide forward, skidding on my heels.
Leave me alone! Let me go! Shit! Let me go!
That is when I see that monster holding up Liam by the throat. "Liam!" I gasp. "Liam! Buddy!"
What the hell is this thing?
He spits in the creature's face. I get up and rush with difficulty through the slanting hall.
Help! Help! Oh, shit!
He screams.
Oliver, help me!
"Liam!" A snap stops my heart, legs, and hope. My eyes widen as the creature drops Liam to the ground. It turns around with the ball in hand, and its eyes glaring through me. A blue light floods the hall. Water blasts through the wall and soaks the hall. Liam's face streams lines of blood, and he keeps sputtering even with his neck broken by this murdering beast. The creature's free hand twirls as it gestures at us. Rage ensues me as the raising water grips at my knees and threatens to drown my stupid desire for revenge. Ashbury groans before easing himself up on his hands. He blinks once, twice, before focusing on everything. His eyes widen. We're in deep shit. I can't fight this thing, and as it turns away from me and nestles that ball, no, that egg in its bosom. It is clear it's not interested with us anymore. Ashbury's and my safety is paramount right now. You must have some extra diving gear somewhere in here, don't you? If the base is prepped for attacks, you have to be prepped for survival, too, I ask.
You're right. We do.
Mike attempts to stand before crying out in pain.
I think my left leg's broken.
The haunting scraping sound echoes as I help Ashbury up. We gotta go. The blue light becomes blinding and burns through the walls with a bang. I froze, and that's when a torrent of water smashes apart everything. The water comes at us like a comet. As if in slow motion, my body passes by Liam's. Ashbury gets swept away by the water, and my body slams into something hard before whirling into a tempest. For a moment, I think I might be dead. I blink my eyes and try to be positive about my arms and legs compressing under the weight of my descent. My lips close as the salt burns the back of my throat. Not like this. My lips tight as a sealer has not given up, and I still have some energy left. I can't die here. My heart leaps off a cliff. It leaps up so fast I think it's propelling upward and out of the water. I follow it. With my arms swinging at my side and my legs together, I push up with all my might. I look around me and see them. Those long creatures. It's an army of them. All of them are swimming out from the crux of the collapsing base I once called home. These must be the residents of this forsaken city, and all this time they lived. The footage of these creatures will never see the light of day. They will always remain a mystery. But I am not becoming history like them, so I swim frantically to the top. The warmth of the sun on the water promises me freedom. Stunned and filled with relief, pure adrenaline pushes me to the surface where I burst through with a smile and tears falling down my face. The smile disappears thanks to a wave of gloom when I find that I'm in the literal middle of the ocean. Only the long, complex metal connection lines are left standing. They are breaking apart right now. Its groans creep me out. The ship we used to get here is nowhere to be found. I don't want to be in this water for a moment longer and give those freaks a chance to take away my life. There appears to be thousands of miles to the shore. A part of me wished I asked about how far we were, but nobody expected this would happen. Liam is gone, and so is Ashbury. My eyes close in frustration as the memories of them curtail my breathing. I'm exhausted, but there's something to be said about being able to survive underwater. I just need to keep going. If I keep going, I'll get to land faster. It's a mad idea. What else can I do? Steadying my breathing, I begin paddling as hard as I can. The sun bakes me to a crisp as I tune out all the noise. From the splashes hitting me to the cries of faraway birds flying in way more freedom than myself. I cannot give up, though. It's dark out now. My body gets heavy. When I get to the shore, I'm going to have to figure out what was going on. Just after I tell everyone what the hell happened to Liam and the film crew. I'm starting to sound like a crazy person, repeating all the things I saw in my head. Just keep going. Just keep swimming. I'll get there soon. Soon. Keep moving forward. Suddenly, pressure wraps around my waist and dangling legs. My heart rises to my throat. They're back for sure. My legs kick faster. The water explodes in my face and my eyes flutter from the mass of blood and darkness. Water crashes into my face and their hands beneath me wrap around my legs. My eyes met the creatures below me. These ones carry metal spears in their tentacle-like arms, while the other arms are trying to drag me to my death. They probably do not want any witnesses. I'm kicking and fighting, panicking. Whatever luck has allowed me to stay in the water this long alive is about to run out. No one, not even an experienced diver such as myself, can survive underwater forever. I use my arms now, like wings, to allow me more pushing power against their pulling. But it's useless. When I look down, I see they're still on the ocean floor, and their long arms stretch like rubber bands, wrapping around me like a spider wrapping me in its web. These scrawny things are strong as hell. Their wrapping hands climb my waist. I pull at their limbs. They circle me like I'm a maypole, only they're not dancing. They're stone-faced, standing still, observing me in fascination as they crack through my bones. My head expands, and my lungs tighten until I'm sure I can't hold my breath in anymore. Reflex prompts me to open my mouth and take in some air. There's nothing but water. It fills me up before filtering out through my nose in tiny bubbles. That's when the pain hits. It is cruel to my body. My chest is on fire. I blink a few times in shock before my still beating heart impales me. My lungs collapses upon itself. I'm running through my list of regrets. The biggest one, taking this job. A screech shatters my focus as the preceding howling noises rise from the water. I become still, screaming as my body slips deeper into the ocean. I swallow so much water that my brain threatens to explode. My eyeballs bulge and my chest swells alongside my pounding heart. The swelling doesn't stop. My hand reaches toward the darkening light of the sun against the sea's surface. Those fingers of mine close. And so does my hope.
Let me start by saying I'm breaching contract by sharing this. If the company's lookouts link this post to me, which they will, I'll be disgraced, and any chance of getting a job in this profession again will be out of the picture. I have the common sense to keep my name unknown, but all that's going to do is slow them down. Keeping this hidden would be a crime against humanity of the highest order. You all deserve to know, as terrible as it is. I work at an unnamed technological research company as, you guessed it, a researcher. In recent years, we've made astonishing advancements in developing technology that can interact with and harness tachyons. Tachyons are particles that travel faster than light. That's the most important part. They've been a subject of theoretical physics since the late 60s, but as far as public knowledge goes, they're still just that, theoretical. But they are most certainly real. Well, not tachyons per se, though their behavior is equatable. I won't bore you with the technicalities, but the result of a particle traveling faster than light is that said particle is able to, effectively, travel backwards in time. My other group members and I have been experimenting with these particles for the best part of 2 years now. We've made major advances, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. Yesterday, March 23rd, 2023, at 9:07 a.m., my equipment detected a tachyon signal. This was in the morning, mind you, and no tests had yet been carried out. From what I can tell, the signal originated, or rather, will originate, from elsewhere. Playing it out loud, it at first just sounded like a garbled mess of frequencies, but after observing the audio structure, I found it to be made up of thousands of tones, of which there were two types, long and short. The realization hit pretty quick. It was Morse code, or at least it could be interpreted as such, the most fundamental form of digital communication known to man. So, I ran it through an auto-interpreter a few times, and got a fully coherent message. I refuse to believe that I'm seeing patterns where there are none. The chances are so astronomically low that I can't feasibly consider it to be a random signal, especially considering I've never received one from somewhere outside the lab. I'm going to copy over the translation here. I do not wish to instill panic, but please, spread this post. People need to be aware that this is a real possibility. To whomever is reading this, prepare yourself. Here it is. Transcription begin. Hi, my name is Tim Hermel. Before I write down this account, I should insist that this is the truth. This is happening to us all, right now. This is not a joke, prank, or an interactive project. This is the truth. You have to believe what you are about to read, for our sakes. Okay, with that out of the way, shit, it's getting closer. I'll write down what I can before we're pulled back to the city to join the others. I hope enough context is given in my account for you to fully understand. I lived in the great city of Pharades, the utopia of humanity's future. Life was amazing. Every aspect brought joy and satisfaction to every person. No hunger, thirst, overpopulation, pollution, a nirvana if there ever was. The level of advancement may be difficult for some of you to believe. Work was optional, and automatons would fill the space left by those choosing to pursue their own personal dreams. Even so, a large number of people here still choose to have jobs, vocations, I suppose. Healthcare was unparalleled, and not one person has died during my time here. Everything major was decided by vote. It was the perfect democratic system, but I'm no politician, so I wouldn't be able to explain to you why that is. Hell, we even had a collective vote to decide the next week's weather every Sunday. That's right, we'd taken control of the weather. Want to splash around in the puddles, smelling the petrichor, maybe get a tan on? You just have to go vote for it. Pharades was, without hyperbole, fucking beautiful. In between the city blocks, there were great swaths of woodland and meadows. Crystal rivers flowed underneath silver bridges, and leaves of every color painted the landscape like polka dots. And the city itself, well, they say nature trumps anything man-made in terms of beauty, but I disagree. The intricately designed towers were accented by all the most complementary colors. Gold, chrome, red, blue, any combination you could imagine. It was here. Arches, spirals, and patterns of every variety adorned the structures. The day in question was a Wednesday. Not that the days of the week held any particular significance anymore. I'd planned to meet with two of my buddies, Aaron and Tuan, at our favorite coffee shop, a couple of districts over in the Wantania area. Historically, the journey may have been arduous or frustrating. Not now. Most people didn't even use vehicles anymore. Instead, the city had built a vast underground network of ever-shifting and rearranging tracts called tuberith. Each person owned a personal pod of sorts, customizable to any degree. I input Wantania Central and hopped inside. My pod contained a sofa and a mini fridge, stocked up with my favorite drinks. The journey was always snappy. Each time, the underground superstructure would arrange a new unique track to be used, direct to a reserved bay. Just 15 minutes later, I was stood under the vaulted, ornamental expanse of the station roof, 100 or so feet above. I always stopped here to just stare upwards for a moment, absorbing the imaginative architecture. After exiting the station, I was surprised to see that both Aaron and Tuan were already waiting for me outside. The good kind of surprised, that slaps a goofy smile onto your face.
Took you long enough,
Tuan chuckled, finding the irony in his own words hilarious.
God, I know, right?
Added Aaron.
I was worried I'd need crutches after standing here waiting.
Well, you're not gonna like this next part, I joked, and we set off down the street laughing. Our favorite cafe was called Beansmith's Forge. It was a cheesy but endearing name, and the theme fit the three of us like a glove. We'd been working on world building for our fantasy RPG, an immersive Neuralink VR experience where the player could design their own character and have a unique quest line, auto-generated out of a complex system. We ordered brunch and, of course, coffee. I won't get into the details of our talks, but we quickly finished up, paid, and set off down Gerben Street. The more exciting event of the day was our session booked at the aptly named Juicebox, something you could call an anti-grav playground. Admittedly, I've never fully known how it works, just that it involves paired wormholes, immensely powerful electromagnetics, and a huge vacuum chamber. One thing I was always grateful for was the automatons, who I saw working robotically through storefront windows, were withheld any accurate human likeness. I'm sure you've heard of the Uncanny Valley, so you'll know what I mean. They fell just short of it. All was calm on the walk, as to be expected. We made it to the Juicebox in good time, 10 minutes before our session booking. I get it's company policy to take everyone through the safety basics, but it was admittedly a little boring after many, many past visits. The only real requirement was that you'd have to wear an osteopathic suit. No, osteostatic. Something about keeping your bones from floating away from each other, or from disappearing over time. We were suited up, ready to enter SS Slamdown, when a sudden tremor shook the building's foundations. Everyone shared the same puzzled expression. Not once had something like that ever happened in Ferrades. The staff looked a bit stumped at first. I guess they never had to deal with a situation like this in the past. To our dismay, but unsurprisingly, our session was canceled, and we were told that they would call us later to sort out a rebooking. I had the strangest feeling when we left and began back down the road. Something similar to déjà vu, but not quite. Like nostalgia, but without the accompanying feeling of reminiscence or joy. Trying to brush it off, I distracted my mind by humming a tune. I didn't know what it was from at the time, but I knew it was a stringed melody. A violin? Thing is, I wasn't really humming it as much as hearing it in my head. We rounded a corner, and Aaron paused in surprise.
Oh, hey! That's Jeremiah! He's been playing that fiddle the street over from mine for the past, 2 weeks? Come on, let's go listen!
I grew confused when we approached, only to hear the exact same melody that had just been looping in my head before I'd heard this guy playing. I don't remember stumbling upon this particular street performer before this point. We stood listening for a few minutes, then continued our walk. Thoughts no longer infested with that tune, I was hit with what can only be described as a taste. The savory taste of something in my tongue, complete with mustard and relish, meat of some kind. The concern started to flourish when we came upon a food truck, and Tuan asked if we were hungry. Sure, we'd just eaten at the coffee shop, but I could fit in one more tasty bite. He offered to pay, which we gladly accepted, and he returned with hot dogs, with mustard and relish. My gratitude masked the ever-growing confusion within me. Was this just a weird coincidence, or something else? Did I know we were going to get hot dogs? We wound up back at the station, where a feeling of detached sorrow welled up inside me. Something you might feel after recalling a bad memory from which you've since recovered. I understood then that I would run into my on good terms ex inside. But before we could enter, another rumbling tremor swept across the street, followed by the clamor of destruction and screams from inside. A gray dust cloud plumed out from the entrance, sweeping us off our feet. I saw Aaron flipped face first into the pavement, just as I caught my heel on the base of a stop sign. Yet another quake boomed underneath the asphalt. The asphalt I was falling down into, but the impact didn't come. Instead of a hard surface, the sensation of falling went on. You know that feeling when you think there's another step at the bottom of the stairs, only to find the floor instead? It was just like that. The ground I fell upon wasn't asphalt. It rang out as I collided, almost hollow sounding, metallic. Maybe it was just my head ringing, but without a doubt, I was not in the street anymore. I sat up, and my palms confirmed I was on a metal floor, the kind with those diamond-shaped grips. Looking around almost caused a complete sensory overload. Immediately, a multitude of flashing lights, screens, wires, buttons, and all sorts decorated the room. It looked not far off from the control room of an intelligence agency, at least how they're depicted in movies. I got onto one knee and pivoted to look around. The tall man standing directly behind me almost led to a second fall, but instead I scooted backwards frantically at the sight. The man, well, I say man, but this person didn't really have any distinguishing features. They were wearing a spotless black and white cloak of some kind, and a metal cage covering the upper half of their face so that only their mouth was visible. They stood still, not reacting to my show of surprise, then spoke in the most androgynous voice conceivable. "How did you get in here?" I scanned the room, finding that there were no obvious entrances anywhere around, like we were inside of a closed-off box.
I fell over, and next thing I know, here.
I stuttered. "Well, you shouldn't be here, and there's no way that you should be able to get here." I stood up, feeling a little more comfortable in the presence of this stranger, though not letting my guard down entirely. Now I could see the pictures displayed across the screens. They seemed to be feeds of countless locations in Ferrati's streets, woodlands, you name it.
What the hell is going on here? Who are you? Why are you spying on the city?
The stranger didn't seem amused, being pelted with questions, and held up a hand, gesturing me to stop. They let out a deep, held breath.
Well, since you're here, I may as well enlighten you. Take a seat.
So I did. I sat in shock and disbelief for the next 5 minutes as the person answered all my questions, even the ones I didn't know I wanted to ask. They introduced themselves simply as administrator, but I chose admin to avoid the mouthful. Admin proceeded to tell me the truth, as casually as one would talk about the weather. It wasn't real. A simulation. They told me we were inside a highly advanced, self-sustaining supercomputer pod traveling through deep space, harvesting energy from ions extracted from the surrounding vacuum. Over 100 trillion years ago, those living here now consented in having their consciousness imported to the device. On top of the ion harvesting, power was supposedly generated from emotions experienced by a consciousness. The more intense an emotion or feeling, the more power generated. I interrupted the monologue at this point with a question they hadn't seemed to consider.
Let's say I believe what you're saying. If this system's been up for as long as you say, why did I only just now have my 29th birthday? What, 2 months back now?
I understand your concern, but allow me to continue. Every 50 years, it is reset. All your memories are wiped and locked away until the moments when you would again make those memories. There are only a set number of people who were uploaded to the system. Their minds cannot simply be deleted if they were to die.
Not only a simulation, but an endless loop. My brain felt like it might burst.
Wait,
I said.
If we're reset every time, and everything plays out the same, then we can't possibly have any free will of our own, right?
I suppose you could say that, but the illusion I have worked tirelessly to maintain gives the impression that you do.
What? So the original me signed up for this, but I'm not him. I'm a copy, aren't I? Do I have a choice in this?
There is no way for me to erase any person that lives here. Only if the pod itself is damaged or destroyed can I, or anyone else, truly die. The great stellar extinction has come and gone, and all that remains outside is cold and dark. A handful of black and brown dwarves and black holes, to my knowledge.
The sudden feeling of intense, hollow loneliness filled up my chest. We were alone in a great black sea of nothingness. My slack jaw must have told the admin I didn't have the capacity to speak.
Over time, I have lost contact with the hundreds of thousands of other pods that were ejected from Earth all that time ago. Either they are too far now, or they met a destructive end. I can't say which is better anymore.
Absorbing the sudden truth, the emptiness evolved into anger.
Let me get this straight. We, living our lives down here, are puppets to you? Is that it? Just an endless cycle of digital paradise, kept in the dark of all you've just told me? How can you possibly justify this?
Calm down. Having your memories wiped is a luxury I myself cannot afford. Anyway, that's only the preface of what I need to talk about. I'm sure you also noticed the tremors down there.
The tremors? Oh yeah. Sort of ruined my plans, but I guess it doesn't matter now?
I didn't do anything. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Whatever the cause, it's not within this pod.
I took it all in. A system malfunction? Why did the admin feel the need to share this with me?
Is that why maybe that I could predict some of the things that happened afterwards?
It's worse than I thought. The memory suppression seems to be failing.
Both of us paused for a moment. The silence was deafening.
I've been taking readings on the external sensors. There's something out there, an object. It's been following us for a while now, but with no starlight left, I don't know what it is. Space debris can't move on its own accord, like this thing is.
What are you trying to say? I sputtered, the dread I felt deepening by the second.
I'm saying that something has found us.
My blood ran cold. Found us? What could have found us? Didn't you say all the stars are dead? The universe is just darkness now? What could have found us? What?
I wish I had the answers too. I don't think we're safe anymore. The most recent readings imply that whatever it is, it's latched onto the pod somehow. Possibly...
Admin was cut off by the loud screech of static from the speakers around the room. Their heads shot up to the nearest corner in a manner that set me on knife's edge. The tremors returned with a vengeance now, and both of us were sent sprawling to the floor. I didn't fall through it this time, though. Sparks flew and monitors went offline. I was about to ask what we should do when the roaring static settled and something started to play. An innocent, childlike giggle, gurgled coos, infantile squeals of joy that pierced my eardrums like needles and left them ringing. Remembering the sounds that came from those speakers makes my insides twist and yearn to escape my body, knowing what came next. The laughter grew, and so did the tremors. The room started to collapse, wires and boxes raining down upon us. Well, not really collapse, no, but change. The far wall crumbled, like something on the other side assailed it with forceful impacts, and the room began to shrink. As if this dark place wasn't claustrophobic enough, the ceiling, walls, everything began to close in on us. All the while, the childlike giggling only grew in joy. I thought we were to be crushed and snapped by the pressure, when we were abruptly free. It had happened again. Pushed through the floor and spat out somewhere else. This time, we found ourselves near a paved road leading out of one of the city blocks into a green meadow which gave way to trees a ways down. Something was terribly wrong. Only after brushing myself off and standing up did I become aware of the swirling darkness that replaced the once baby blue sky with its cotton candy clouds. A heavy and unsettling calm had fallen upon us, dampening the city's brilliance. No more did sunlight gleam over the ornate spires and arches, replaced by a still, hanging shadow. The eerie quiet was shattered by that godforsaken crackling, booming across the landscape despite not a speaker in sight, again followed by those ill-belonging coos and cries. Accompanying the infantile sputtering came an uproar of crackling and crumbling, great impacts from deep within the city's heart. Both Admin and I stared in disbelief as distant buildings sunk into the ground, while others twisted and warped their way into the sky, as if made from soft clay. Some just disappeared entirely, leaving not a shred of evidence behind that they had ever been there, while their former inhabitants plunged from stories above.
It's taken my place.
Those four unprompted words shook me to the core of my being. The god of this world had been usurped. But why? I found myself asking. With what motive? Admin went to reply, but stopped upon seeing the great pinkish masses floating up out of the streets far ahead. We stared in bewilderment, trying to make out what they were. The chorus of screams hurried us to the realization that the balls were made of people. Agonized, howling faces littered the fleshy abominations, while more objects rose around them. Structural beams, signposts, metal objects of every kind gravitated towards the amalgams of humanity before their relentless assaults began. Ripping, tearing, stabbing, slicing, it was already too much for my mind to comprehend. It garnered no reaction from myself other than the stunned shock. Flesh and blood spewed from the masses and orbited around them like the rings of Saturn, falling back in to haphazardly patch themselves back onto the wailing people. My thoughtless attention was redirected as a frantic deluge of citizens fled the city, running down the street towards us. One by one, the exodus was halted, people seeming to stop in place abruptly, though the screams did not relent. I couldn't see what had stopped them until the crowd drew closer, where I saw an elderly man whip forward, foot stuck fast, instantly snapping his knee from the momentum. He let out a heart-wrenching cry as he fell down and looked to see what had stopped him. Something that looked like roots, water pipes maybe, had erupted through the tarmac and coiled their way up his leg. I could see the strength draining in his eyes as they stood him back upright by force, wrapping around his entire body. I watched in abject horror as he was raised off the ground, and each and every one of the old man's limbs were bent and snapped at unnatural angles, shattering frail bones into dust. His feeble cries were promptly silenced as a squirming metal tube forced its way inside his mouth, his eyes rolling back in unfathomable agony as the bulging mass forced its way down his throat, splitting his rib cage apart and allowing the organs within to slop out and float in the air as if weightless. The whole process seemed to reverse itself in time, then repeat, over and over. I could only hear the echoes of admin's shouts and the faint sensation of their grip on my forearm as they pulled me away from the mind-bending atrocity. My vacant body tumbled backwards, sending both of us falling onto the grass. Still, I could only sit there, frozen. Somewhere off to the right, I saw a young woman pulling presumably her daughter along by the wrist, fleeing the hellscape of flesh and bone down a small alley. Her head spun wildly as she noticed the walls of the alleyway closing in around them. She burst out into the open, but was yanked back, her grip fast. She turned in desperation, only to see her daughter, who couldn't have been more than 7, being slowly crushed into a paste of bloody flesh and yellow fat. Her pitiful screams still ring in my ears, seeing her child suffer such a terrible fate. Admin was finally triumphant in breaking my trance, and I rushed to my feet, stumbling before gaining my footing and bolting the fuck out of there. The childish giggling echoing out over the sky only served to push me forwards and away from that place.
What the fuck is going on?
I yelped, glancing over to Admin, hoping they could offer just the slightest of explanations.
I have an idea, but we need to get somewhere first. You see that hill through the woods? Right over there?
Hill? To the observatory?
There's one last thing we can try to stop this. It's a shot in the dark, but I can't just stand here and fade away with the rest.
High-speed winds whipped the trees as we ran below them, leaves fluttering in a wild seizure. Air-splitting cracks sounded so loud, my ears began to ring once more, and I looked over my shoulder to see what they could have been. Blazing spouts of fire shot down from the clouds behind, more akin to lightning than anything, striking the Forsaken with white-hot temperatures. Even from a distance, I could see skin and flesh melt off of bones like candle wax, forming spiraling clouds of organic vapor. In my distraction, I ran straight into a tree and tumbled over, blood leaking from a small cut on my forehead. Admin skidded to a stop and pulled me up to my feet and ran onwards, not waiting for a moment to ask if I was okay. Neither of us were okay. That was a given now. We reached the top of the hill without too much effort. Seems it was programmed for everyone to have an above-average level of fitness, young or old, regardless. Admin frantically, but methodically, sifted through what appeared to be a large hoop of keys, searching for the one that fit the observatory's door. I looked back over to where we had fled from. The twisted buildings coiled towards the sky, gargantuan talons holding captive everyone I'd ever known. But there was something else. Far behind the city, in the distant hills and woodland, a great black wave that spanned the horizon was traveling towards us, eviscerating the world itself. All it left behind was an endless chasm of darkness, defying reality itself. The tsunami came closer, before stopping at the city's outskirts, leaving only a towering earthen spire of suffering, flaming bolts cracking down upon it.
Admin! What is going on?
They paused for a moment, then continued working on the several locks barring our entry.
Do you remember what I told you earlier, when you found me? How this system is able to keep on running over the trillions of years?
Ions?
Yes, but that's only the basis. I told you that emotional activity generates power. Yes? The more intense an emotion, the more power generated?
What are you getting at?
This is pure theory, but I believe that whatever is out there is feeding off the system.
Is that why all this was happening?
I stifled a gag, recalling the horrors fresh in my memory.
Again, it's a theory. I don't understand what it is. If the constraints of the universe are loose enough for something to evolve in its endless darkness to predate on the last sources of energy within it, I don't know, and I doubt we ever will.
I stared out at the hellscape, speechless. Finally, admin found the right key, yanked the door open, and pulled me inside by the arm.
Hey!
Admin yelled, snapping their fingers.
I need you to be present for this. I am restricted in this world. I can't break and reform things like you can. A failsafe. For if the power were to go to my head, follow my instructions exactly.
They told me how to break apart some of the technology in the observatory and rewire it into a different machine. I had no idea what we were creating at the time, but compiled nonetheless. The finished product was a makeshift beacon of some kind, connected to the nearby terminal.
Thank you. Now, type.
Type what?
Everything that has happened. Add as many details as you can, because we won't have another chance to get this out there.
Okay. What is this thing? A radio?
In a way, the observatory is one of the only places here that has a connection to the outside. I have used it more than once to observe the universe fading away. This setup will send our transmission as a unique, superluminal type of wave. Hurry, we can't waste time chatting about this.
And so, here we are. I don't know who will be hearing this, if anyone at all. I beg you, consider how our advancements might be our downfall. It's almost here. I can hear the flaming bolts striking the forest. Closer. This is my account. Please save us. Please spare us. Don't condemn us as you have. Transcription N. There it is. I've revised the translation more times than I can count, and I'm sure there's no mistake here. Other readings imply that this message has traveled an unimaginable vast distance, and not only over space. Repeated triangulation only tells me this came from above, somewhere far away, among the stars. I can feel the edges of my mind singeing. This can't be proven as truth, nor can it be discredited. There's no possible way to explain how this message came from our own planet. I'm trying to be rational, but I think we need to consider future development very carefully. As a people, we have always rushed through our technological advancements at an incredible speed, not stopping to consider all the consequences that might follow. If anyone will believe this, please spread it around. I have no doubt this post will be taken down the moment they find it. As for myself, I'll be disgraced, probably. Stuck in a cold cell, most likely. Spread the word. The fact that the higher-ups will attempt to conceal this is a cruel thing indeed, if any of it is true. Signing off. Hey sci-fi horror fans, it's John. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Craving for another scary story? Click on that video on your screen. Until next time, everyone, and remember, stay cosmic.